All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone that's here tonight. It's a full house. And would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call tonight. All board members are in attendance. And we'll start with open forum. So in accordance to Board Policy 203, a 15-minute time period is set aside to receive citizen input through this open forum segment on the board agenda. Sign-up sheets available at least 10 minutes prior to meeting time at the door. Input from students, staff, parents, and community members in major decisions can be a valuable form of assistance to the board. Open forum is an opportunity to address the board. At least 10 minutes prior to each meeting, a sign-up sheet is available at the meeting site for individuals to sign up to address the board. Only those whose names appear on the sign-up sheet at the time the meeting is called to order shall be permitted to address the board. Up to 5 speakers shall be provided a maximum of 3 minutes, 15 minutes total, to address the board unless an exception is granted by the board chair. Speakers will not be allowed to verbally attack, disparage, or potentially defame individual board members, employees, or students. Nor may speakers use vulgar or profane language. Also, speakers may be precluded from disclosing personally identifiable private data regarding employees or students. Speakers unwilling to conform to the rules or time constraints may be told that his/her privilege of speaking has ended. Board members shall listen respectfully to issues brought to them by the community, but not engage the individuals during their time. The board shall not deliberate or take action during the open forum regarding an issue presented. If follow-up by administration is necessary, the chair shall request that the superintendent follow up on the matter. When the board chair proceeds with the meeting, audience comments are no longer in order. However, the board members retain the right to call on district administrators for information to assist the board in its deliberations. So tonight, our open forum will begin with Sarah Anderson, who had, the topic is a letter from parent.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Anderson. I am a parent of still school-aged children in Prior Lake who we never enrolled, and I'm also a concerned citizen. I am reading a letter on behalf of a parent, Nikki Saputo, who cannot be here this evening since she is coaching this evening for our district. Dear School Board, Chair, and other directors, as a parent of PLSAS-aged students, I have been watching school board meetings closely for several years now. We are, as a family, deciding on whether PLSAS is a safe place for our cisgender Christian white children. During the last school board meeting, a teacher named Mrs. Welch name-called with gross bias that my family is hateful and compared us to Nazis, if we are liberty-minded. To myself and our family, we teach our children to love all people and treat each other the way you want to be treated. As someone who has personal experience with losing loved ones to suicide, including my first one at age 13, my jaw hit the floor when those untruthful and hurtful comments were made. As myself and others, according to her in the hate group, sent prayer requests for her family during their tumultuous and grief-stricken time. What I don't understand is that the board deemed these remarks as appropriate, while parents read words deemed inappropriate from library books from our public schools and were stricken down purely for their content. At the school board meeting on June 12th, the choice of organizing a political show of force with some district teachers, the union president, and union members from across the entire state will have consequences. The union applauding statements publicly condemning parents in the community who just want transparency, parental rights, and a return to basic education has consequences. Ultimately, the consequences may entail a decrease in student enrollment. As families like ours decide on a daily basis what is best for our children, we are the primary decision makers in our children's lives, not the state. We watch how you treat each person and how you treat your colleagues when they may disagree. The only school board member who has been responsive and promotes transparency is Lisa Atkinson. I am watching how the board and the district is inclusive with her diverse way of thinking. What I'm seeing across the state and what appears to be a coordinated effort are attacks on school board members who are standing up for parents, whose voices are being unheard and dismissed. I hope this won't be the case with the only board member who is my voice and the voice of over 10,000 of the most votes of anyone on the board in the last election. An attack on her is an attack on those who, sorry, my printer cut off. My question is, how is the board going to treat Lisa and other parents who believe in respecting others with differing opinions? Sincerely, Nikki Saputo. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Katie Gabriel, and her topic is signs in our schools and the equity resolution.
Chair Crosby, Director is Dr. Thomas. My name is Katie Gabriel. I use she, her pronouns, and I have 2 students in our district. I'd like to share my thoughts about signs and messages in our schools, including posters on the walls and clothing worn by students, staff, and teachers. Messages such as anti-racist Lakers, Lakers against hate, all are welcome here, and t-shirts with supportive messages for our BIPOC and LGBTQ+ students. I've heard comments from some in the community that everyone they've talked to wants these signs removed. Well, they have not talked to me because I love these signs and the supportive messages they send to our students. The signs take the words of our district's equity resolution and starts putting them into action. The resolution states that the board is fully committed to developing and sustaining an inclusive and anti-racist school community where all students, parents, families, staff, and community members are safe, welcomed, and valued, notwithstanding their race, ethnicity, gender, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, linguistic diversity, socioeconomic status, or membership in any other protected class. I was walking out of Twin Oaks this past spring and heard a parent behind me say that these signs should not be allowed, that the district should not be promoting anti-racism. I wanted to turn around and ask, what should we be promoting? Racism? Should we have signs with messages such as racist Lakers, Lakers for hate, only straight, white, cisgender people are welcome here? I'm guessing that every single one of you felt at least a little sick to your stomach hearing me say those words. Based on board policy, board members are supposed to be speaking in a united single voice. If the board takes these signs down and prohibits teachers and staff from wearing clothing with inclusive messages on them, the voice of the board has then completely diverged from your own equity resolution, sending a clear message to our students and all who walk into our schools that we are not welcoming and inclusive of our entire community. Likewise, anytime board members take to social media or speak with news outlets sharing their own personal beliefs, and a voice that goes against the board's own equity resolution is extremely concerning because it's sending a clear message that some members of our community are not safe, welcomed, and valued in our schools. Remove the signs? I think we need more of these signs and an ongoing commitment to action based on our equity resolution to ensure that we're creating a district where all of our students feel a sense of belonging and safety in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have, I believe, Ann Boyd, and the topic is disparaging of parents in the community by teachers.
Hello, my name is Ann Boyd. I'm a resident, and I'm reading a letter to the editor by Jason Allen. Jason is out of town and asked me to read his letter. It's labeled Board Presentation Only Deepens Divisions. Jason writes, I'm a father of 3 school-age children, husband of an educator, and an active member of the community. I'm writing in regard to a speech that presented to the school board on Monday, June 12th, by 3 teachers. This speech was well-written and delivered with the kind of enthusiasm one would expect from people who have deep convictions for the things they believe in and advocate for. It was also misleading and dishonest. Disparaging assertions were made within the speech about members of liberty groups within our local community. These are moms, dads, concerned citizens who've taken a vested and active interest in the education of the students within the district. The teacher's speech attempted to paint a picture of people who peddle fear, restrict school staff, and desire to suppress the voices of students with whom they disagree. One of the teachers said, "They say they are for liberty, but their acts are of bigotry," while also making the claim that Moms for Liberty was designated a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center, a left-leaning political activist organization. Not only was her assertion inaccurate, but it was also misleading and intolerant, especially because the statement was made by a teacher in the district. I recognize that our culture is currently at a crossroads. These are difficult times, and they deserve and demand earnest and sincere action. The teachers in this district have my respect, because while they are drowning in a pool of chaos, they are continually being handed more. However, when teachers take to the podium and use it as a platform to paint an unfair and inaccurate picture of groups with whom they have ideological disagreements, something must be said, especially when these teachers proclaim to be advocates for inclusion and equity. I'm an optimist. I'm a Christian, he writes. I have genuine hope in a path forward that allows every voice to be heard and every person to have a place at the table. Yet I'm also a realist, and I recognize that this will never happen if we are unwilling or unable to see those with whom we disagree, even those who we disagree with strongly, as allies instead of enemies. We all desire the same thing. We want to see our diverse group of students thrive and succeed. This must start with us and our commitment and willingness to push our differences aside and choose kindness over prejudice. We are all guilty, and we can all do better. I hope we will. This is Jason Allen from Prior Lake.
Thank you. And our last speaker tonight is Shannon Smith, speaking on the rights of parents and students and board policy.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Thomas. My name is Shannon Smith. I'm a mother of 2 Lakers and a college junior. As stated in Policy 601.1, the policy that was shared on social media in a paid advertisement, along with an Alpha News article, as a parent, I have a right to request to review curriculum that my children are learning about or being taught. I have the right to request that their teacher provide my child alternative learning resources if I oppose any content that's being shared. A person quoted in the article claimed that parents should have been notified of a recent BrainPop video proactively, but the teacher had no obligation to do so under the policy. Teachers need the ability to adjust lessons for their students' unique learning and social needs and the need for representation in curriculum for a diverse student population. There's no way that parents can truly understand the unique needs of a specific class. Even as a substitute, I can't tell those needs just from a single day or 2 in a class. Parental rights are one's right as a parent of their own children and do not have the right to demand full class curriculum changes, removal of BrainPop videos, or the removal of books from the media centers. Parents have the right to voice concerns and adjust their own child's experience, as has been done in the past. Nobody has the right to argue or decide what is appropriate for my children except myself and my husband. We have the full trust in PLSAS educators to teach age-appropriate content, which is why we have chosen to send them to public schools. Public schools are an amazing opportunity for children to be educated on different cultures, teachings, and learnings that may differ from what's done at home. This includes learning that queer and trans people exist. It is within a parent's right to tell their child that they don't believe that. It's not a parent's right to stop a school district from recognizing the existence of queer and trans people. Individual beliefs do not override a person's right to be valued, heard, and accepted in our schools. Contrary to what some believe, being transgender is not the result of a social contagion. Creating safe, welcoming, and supportive spaces for LGBTQ youth won't suddenly make your child queer or trans. Creating these spaces can help students be better disposed for learning, improve mental health, and can even help prevent harm or suicide. The American Academy of Pediatrics discusses studies that show this. From 2017 and 2019, the percentage of transgender or gender-diverse youth that reported school bullying went from 39% to 45%. The percentage of cisgender heterosexual youth that reported stayed flat at 17%. The only thing that seems to be a social contagion is the fear of transgender youth being welcomed and accepted in schools and educational materials acknowledging them as the people that they are. I know the board is supposed to publicly speak with one unified voice. Lately, that voice has been hurtful.
Shannon?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we've hit 3 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see.
So if you can wrap it up,
Yeah,
that'd
oh,
be
no.
great. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all our speakers tonight for taking your time on this lovely July evening. We will move on to approval of agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please? So made. Director Beliana, second.
Second.
So made. Director Olsted, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 7-0. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed as a consent agenda item and addressed. So our consent agenda items tonight are in the board packet. All the detail is there, but I'll list them as financials, purchase orders exceeding $25,000, monthly financial report, enrollment report, approval of school board minutes, personnel items, and approval of memberships.
Chair Crosby?
Yeah.
I don't know if do I need a motion for this, or?
Nope,
Okay. Could I pull the approval of memberships for further discussion, please?
you can, and I suggest we move that to the end of new business. Making sure Martha thinks that's the appropriate spot.
Thank you.
Okay. For tonight,
For tonight, okay.
just pulling it off consent for discussion and vote. Okay, so there's been a motion made, well, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda with everything except for the approval of memberships, which will be moved to new business?
So made.
By Director Burnick.
Second.
Second by Director Velazquez. All in favor?
Aye.
That passes 7-0. That brings us to the resolution for acceptance of gifts, and we have none this evening, so we'll move on to Laker Pride. And I'll hand it off to Dr. Thomas and Activities Director Jeff Marshall.
Thank you, Chair Crosby. And tonight, we've got quite an array of students that we're going to recognize for our spring athletics and activities. And with us tonight, we have our District Athletic Director, Mr. Jeff Marshall, who will take the reins from here. And just for efficiency and time, Mr. Marshall, I've got all their certificates here. I'll hand them to you, and I'll leave it to you to get them to the students at the end.
In a second. Good evening, school board directors, Chair Crosby, Superintendent Thomas. Very excited to be able to honor and recognize so many of our individuals tonight from our spring sports and athletics and activities. All of those who qualified for state tournaments are those who will be recognized. But before I get to that point, we do have our typical co-curricular report for the spring. Just as a reminder to all of you in terms of the mission statement, the vision statement of our activities department, to understand education-based athletics and what that, education-based athletics and activities and what that means. So again, for us as a department, definition of success is to create lifelong memories, to develop lifelong relationships, and to teach and learn lifelong lessons. As you can see, our definition of success is not in the wins column. It is more about developing outstanding human beings and citizens who are going to go on to contribute to society and carry on those lifelong lessons with them. As part of our traits that we believe in, we've got a list of our moral character traits that we want all of our student athletes and activity participants to understand as they go through our programs. That, again, as you read down with our acronym of LAKER, for moral character traits, we want them to have a love of the people and the activities they're involved in, to have an appreciation, display kindness, empathy, and respect. And when it comes to performance, we also have our list of performance character traits, which again, you can see the Laker acronym down the left-hand side. We want our student athletes and activity members to think about leaving a legacy. What kind of legacy are they leaving within their programs? We want them to be advocates, taking responsibility for themselves and being willing to speak up. We want them to have the knowledge of that activity and that sport in which they're in, and to be able to effectively and safely be able to implement that. We want them to show enthusiasm, and we also want them to be resilient, because we also know and understand that there are going to be some failures as they go through life and as they go through these activities in the sports. And so we want them to be able to be resilient, to be able to bounce back from those setbacks. We have our spring season participation numbers. Again, this is something that can be shared with all of you. Our participation numbers stayed pretty similar to where they were last year. Again, if you add up all of those numbers, we're looking at approximately 500 students who are involved in our spring sports and activities at this point. And now to our spring sports update. We're going to start with our sports before we switch over to activities. So we're going to start, again, this is a breakdown of all of our teams, and we're going to be honoring and recognizing those teams that went on to state this year. So we're going to start with our boys lacrosse program. I know that a lot of our boys lacrosse players are actually off playing in different areas of the state or different areas of the country right now, so we don't have a lot that were able to make it. But thanks to these three guys who were able to come out, our boys lacrosse team started off this year 1-4. So with a 1-4 start, it did not look very promising at that point. They did rattle off 8 consecutive regular season wins after that to finish 9-4. They went into sections as the 3 seed. However, coming out of sections, they were able to win and qualified for state for the 7th consecutive year. One of the highlights as they went on to the state tournament was to beat Benilde in the state semifinals, which was a very exciting game, very fun to be able to watch. And they ended up advancing to the state championship game for the 3rd consecutive year. Unfortunately, we ended up losing to Lakeville North in overtime in the state championship 11-10, which was the 2nd year in a row of losing in overtime. However, last year was to Benilde, so the fact that we beat Benilde this year was still pretty exciting. So, but at this point, again, we're able to recognize 3 of the players that were on that team. The coaches this year were Casey Methune, Sam Kepner, Austin Polson McCannon, and Louis Clifton. Boys, congratulations on an outstanding season. Next, we're going to invite in our adapted softball team. They actually brought their trophy to be able to show to all of you. Come on in. You want to stand out here? So our adapted softball team had a pretty good season during the season, but when it got to postseason play, that's when they really shone. They ended up beating Mounds View to be able to qualify for the state tournament. And when they went to the state tournament, they ended up losing a very close quarterfinal game to St. Cloud by, I think, just 1 goal. But they came back and they actually beat White Bear Lake by quite a bit and ended up beating Osseo in the Consolation Championship game to finish as Consolation champions. The players are here. And we also have our coaches, Jody Tornquist and Julia Reese, along with one of our para-coaches, Renee Lawrence, is also here as well. And these are the players from the Southern Stars. It's important to note that we are in a cooperative agreement with Shakopee and Chaska-Chan, but we actually host adapted softball in the spring, and they actually play their games over at Twin Oaks. And if you've never been to a game, I highly recommend it, because they are some of the most exciting and unbelievable sportsmanship games that you'll ever experience. So congratulations to all of you on an outstanding season.
Congratulations. Oh, thank you.
The next team that we're going to bring is going to be our robotics team. This year, our robotics team participated in the first robotics competitions challenge that was called Charged Up. During the third week of March, the team attended the Central Illinois Regional in Peoria, Illinois, where they placed fourth as an alliance overall and also received the Engineering Inspiration Award, which qualified them for the World Championships in Houston, Texas. At the World Championships, they placed 48th out of 77 teams. And with the accomplishments at the Central Illinois Regional, the team also qualified for the Minnesota State High School League state tournament in May, where they ended up ranking 11th out of 36 teams. Our team members are here. Our coaches this year were Mike Linz, Martin Davis, Andrew Banis, Michael Cirillo, Bill Jenkins, Bob Jacobson, Dick Charts, and Sarah Steffen. And I know Shristi's going to come over, and they've got a little bit of a demonstration that they want to show, and she's going to come talk a little bit about the robot.
Incredible.
Hi, can you guys hear me properly? Okay. My name is Srishti. I was one of the captains this past season, and this is our robot, Lady Guinevere. This was our competitive robot for the 2023 season. As stated before, we started our season in January, and at the time we designed this robot capable of a few goals. So the challenge for this season was the robot had to be capable of placing these inflatable cubes, kind of like beach balls, on a set of stairs, so like different levels. So you had to lift up the cubes from the ground and place it on a set of staircase. And then there were also cones, like traffic cones, and you had to place them on certain poles. So our robot is capable of, do you want to, Ethan and Sanjana, put the robot's arm all the way down and like demonstrate? Sorry, it's a bit jumpy. Our robot is capable of raising up to 8 feet high, and we placed pretty well this season, and we're glad to be back after the COVID years, so thank you so much.
Good job. Watch out.
Behind the podium.
Coming through. Watch out, Martha.
Next, we will have our trap and our skeet shooting team come in. Hopefully they didn't bring something to take that out of commission. All right, this year in trap, the team won the conference championship, going undefeated for their 14th straight conference title. The team also won their second straight Class 9A title at the Minnesota High School Clay Target League State Championships in Alexandria. At that tournament, Will Johnson was also the highest individual shooter in Class 9A. At the Minnesota State High School League Final, the team took second, falling 5 shots short of winning the score. And Cole Kruger was an all-state trap shooter, which is the top 100 in the state out of over 12,000 participants. And for those of you who don't know, trap shooting in Minnesota is the largest sport that is out there. There has the most participants of any other sport in the entire state of Minnesota. And I do believe that Minnesota is the only state, from the high school league's perspective, that actually recognizes it as a sport as well. The skeet team also won the conference and then finished second at the state finals as well. And I know that they just finished up nationals this past weekend, and I have not heard the results, but I heard that they did pretty well, so glad to hear that. So again, team members, come on up, and the coaches this year were Scott Conrad and Tim Johnson. Congratulations. I was just told they finished 4th in the nation as well. Oh, 24th. I'm still pretty darn good. 24th in the nation.
Look at basketball team.
Congratulations. So proud of you guys.
We're going to bring forward before we start to recognize some individuals is our boys volleyball team. This year, our boys volleyball team finished 12-2 during the regular season, which was pretty exciting. The matches they had were unbelievable, lots of energy coming out of these guys, and just something that was really fun to watch. They qualified for the postseason, finishing second in the conference and advancing to the playoffs. In the playoffs, the team beat Egan to advance to state, and when they went to state, they were actually seeded 5th. At state, in the first round, they beat Washburn in 3 sets before going up against Eden Prairie, who was the 4 seed. They beat EP in an unbelievably thrilling 5-set match that, again, the excitement and the adrenaline in that room was just incredible to be able to watch that. Advancing on to the semifinals to then play the number 1 seed Andover. Well, that energy carried over because they took care of Andover in 3 sets to then advance to the championship against Rogers, where the Lakers ended up becoming the state champions by beating Rogers in 4 sets. Here, coaches this year were Mark Nelson, Maggie De Silva, Alex McGeehan, and Ryan Fuller. Obviously, we have not the whole team here, but a good representation of the team here to be able to share their trophy. And certainly one of the other big victories that occurred during the course of this season is the fact that this is now going to become a Minnesota State High School League sponsored sport starting in the 24-25 school year as representative. Congratulations to all of you. Nice job on winning the state championship. Next, we will be honoring and recognizing a number of individuals who qualified in their individual sports and activities for state tournaments. We will start with girls track. Qualifying for the state tournament for our girls track and field this past year were Addie White, Isabel Reinders, Sarah Gastany, Clara Gillen, Layla Vanek, Olivia Duncan, and coaches Jimmy Barlis, Kirsten Nelson, Sandrine Lemassier, Joe Bollinger, and Sean Allen. The girls track team this year finished 4th in the South Suburban Conference, 2nd at sections, and 9th at state. Addie White at the state meet finished 6th in the 100 and 2nd in the 300 hurdles. And the 4x800 relay team finished 5th, and that consisted of Isabel Reinders, Sarah Gastany, Clara Gillen, and Layla Vanek. Isabel Reinders also finished 6th in the 400, and Olivia Duncan finished 12th in the shot put and 4th in the discus. Congratulations, ladies.
Congratulations.
Next up, we'll be bringing in our boys track and field members, Josh Marcinkiewicz, Surafel Bearcat, Grayson Spronk, Hunter McGillivray, Evan Laffridge, Thomas Anderson, and coaches Ken Clam, Nick Grimmy, Pete Hartman, John Flatness, and Max Mosier. This year, the boys track and field team also finished 2nd in the South Suburban Conference at 3rd at sections. At the state tournament, Josh Marcinkiewicz finished 6th in the 100, and the 4x100 team finished 10th, and that consisted of Surafel Bearcat, Grayson Spronk, Hunter McGillivray, and Josh Marcinkiewicz. Evan Laffridge also finished 6th in the shot put, and Thomas Anderson finished 16th in the discus at the state tournament. And with us tonight, we have Hunter and Josh are both here. So congratulations, gentlemen. Next up, we have our synchronized swimming team. The state team consisted of Alessi Evavold, Addison Lavelle, Claire Hilzendegger, Sadie Stimler, Jasmine Duhadaway, Emily Forster, and Coach Carrie Kabushek. The synchronized swimming team this year had 3 routines who qualified for state. The long duet, which was Ellisy and Addison, the long trio, which was Claire, Sadie, and Jasmine, and the long team, which finished in 5th place, which consisted of Ellisy, Addison, Claire, Sadie, Jasmine, and Emily. And overall, the team ended up finishing in 9th place at the state tournament this past year in synchronized swimming. Ladies, congratulations on your accomplishments. And unfortunately, our last sports team was the badminton team. We are actually in a cooperative agreement with Burnsville in badminton. Last year, we had 1 girl who participated. This past year, we actually had 6 girls who went out for badminton in our cooperative with Burnsville. And so we're very excited that that's starting to grow. Jasmine Tran was our 2-time participant, and the team actually finished 2nd at the state tournament this past year. And Jasmine finished in the top 8 as a doubles player at that point. She fell ill today; she was unable to make it. But I know she and her dad have been really pushing and very excited about badminton and having that opportunity for our student athletes to be able to participate. So, but again, unfortunately, they were not able to be here. So, next up, we will be bringing in members of our speech team: TK Tongvan, Smriti Dada, Ava McKeon, Adria Hedrick, Mackenzie Bounds, Amy Waters, Abby Leach, and coaches Nick Ingalls, Jared Daggett, and Emily Nelson. The speech team had 3 individuals who qualified for state this year. TK ended up finishing in 14th place in creative expression. Smriti ended up finishing 3rd in dramatic interpretation, and Ava ended up finishing 11th in storytelling. The amazing thing is, we also had 6 individuals who qualified and participated in the national tournament this past spring. Adria took 7th in original spoken word poetry in the nation and 42nd in poetry. Mackenzie finished 39th in the nation in poetry and 66th in prose. Amy finished 83rd in storytelling and 127th in prose. Smriti, who's unable to be here with us tonight as she just moved to North Carolina, if I remember correctly, finished 14th in dramatic interpretation. Ava finished 123rd in storytelling and 127th in prose, and Abby finished 123rd in storytelling and 127th in prose. So to hear those places, again, this is in the nation is where these students are finishing, and all of them, the ones who went to state finished unbelievably well as well too. So the speech program here is incredible. The coaches do a fantastic job, and certainly a lot of it also has to do with the dedication and the commitment that these students put into speech, and it's been amazing to watch them. It is one of those things that's not always the biggest spectator sport, but when you do go and actually get to listen to some of the speeches, they are incredible to be able to listen to and are very entertaining. So congratulations to all of you. Next up, we're able to honor and recognize a number of our fine arts students for some outstanding skills and abilities that they have displayed. This past year, we had 4 of our students who earned all state honors in choir. You want to come on in? Nathan Bogeman for the male's choir, Adria Hedrick for mixed choir, Lydia Rand in the female choir, and Morgan Sundberg for the male choir. Again, all of them earned all state honors and recognitions in choir, so congratulations. Teachers are here with us tonight as well, Randy Erlinson and Rob Hahn. And again, I think both of these students will attest to the fact that these 2 teachers do an unbelievably remarkable job of preparing these students and getting them ready to be able to sing very well. So congratulations again. Next up, we have 6 students who have earned all-state honors in band for this past year. So if you want to come on in. And our 6 students who earned all-state honors this year are McKenna Byer in flute, Felix Wynn in flute, Chloe Collins in oboe, Lydia Winnick as a bass clarinet, Izzy Ullman on the trombone, and Ravelyn France for percussion. And Lydia, right? Oh, I'm sorry, McKenna, I apologize, McKenna. McKenna's the only one who is here tonight, and unfortunately, the teachers weren't able to make it, but we have our choir teachers who will be standing in for them as well, too. So congratulations, McKenna. And our final awards for tonight are awards that are given out by the department at the end of the year to be able to honor and recognize some outstanding folks. The first one is our Athena Award. Our Athena Award winner was not able to make it here tonight, but the Athena Award winner goes to a senior female athlete from each school within the Minneapolis area who was then honored and recognized at a banquet. This year, Brooke Holmes was our Athena Award winner. She's an outstanding hockey player and softball player. We also then decide on certain athletes of the year at the end of the school year. We actually had 2 male athletes of the year this year receiving the Joe Tusanong Award. Those 2 individuals were Ben Mickett and Grayson Spronk, and they were not able to be here tonight. Our female athlete of the year award, which is the Tammy Kemper Award, went to Rachel Ward, and Rachel is here tonight. So come on out, Rachel. Absolutely unbelievable lacrosse player. She's been on the varsity lacrosse since, I believe, 8th grade, 7th grade, 7th grade. Thank you for correcting me on that. She is taking her lacrosse skills and her academic skills to American University next year, where she will continue on. I can speak, I know this for a fact, that Rachel has been somebody who has just been a spark on the team, has made a very significant difference, not only in her playing skills and her abilities, but the leadership that she has provided and the guidance that she has provided for so many of the younger lacrosse players. Rachel was actually given a statewide award as well, too, because of her leadership skills, which is the highest girls lacrosse leadership award that's given in the state, and Rachel was a recipient of that this year. So congratulations, Rachel. Our final award that we presented at the end of the year was our Activity Students of the Year Award. Again, unfortunately, neither one of these students were able to be here, but our male Activity Student of the Year went to Jackson Tressel. Jackson was very involved in choir and in band and in theater. As I told him when we presented the award, I remember him as the Cowardly Lion, which again, for those of you who were on the school board last year, remember when they showed up at the school board meeting out of nowhere, came walking in all their costumes. So Jackson was the lion who disrupted that meeting, but it was fantastic. And our female Activity Student of the Year was Smriti Dada. Smriti, again, very involved in speech, very involved in DECA, has received numerous, not only state level awards, but national awards for her participation. So the last thing I just want to share real quickly is we also had some outstanding performances this past spring from the fine arts level. I do have some pictures up here, but the theater department put on Sherlock Holmes, which if you weren't able to make that was a great mystery, very exciting to be able to watch that and see that. Every year our choir puts on the amazing Celebrate concert. I was lucky enough to sit next to Dr. Thomas during that concert, and I know he was just amazed at the performances that went on during that time. And we certainly had a wide range of band concerts that also happened this past spring. So again, if you're ever able to make it out to some of these fine arts performances, I encourage you to do so. So lastly, we're just very grateful that we're able to continue to have these opportunities for our student athletes and student activity participants to continue to be a part of. And a big thank you certainly to our coaches and advisors, our teachers and administrators, all of you here, as well as our district staff, our custodial staff, who oftentimes are overlooked for the things that they do to make sure that everything is up and running as well, too. Certainly all of the parents, you could see that a lot of parents were here supporting their students. And then lastly, certainly all the student participants and our spectators who come. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Sorry I got a little long-winded.
That's great. Thank you.
Mr. Marshall, thanks so much for coming tonight, and big thanks to you and Beth Fuller and Nancy as we send her off in her final. She says she'll be back now and again to check in with us, but this Laker Pride portion of the meeting, all nights, but tonight too, with all the kids that were honored, is very grounding in what we do and kind of brings us back to a place of, a center where we should be and where we should always work from. So thanks for taking the time to be here, and it was great to hear all the good news.
Yes, thank you. And again, real quick, I appreciate you bringing up those other individuals because Heather Pearson and Beth Fuller
Yeah.
and Nancy Tice are absolutely amazing people who keep our office running unbelievably well. And for those who don't know, Nancy is retiring. Thursday's her last day, so she's around just this week.
Friday.
She's here tonight for, Friday. Well, I think she's taking that. She's skipping Friday, I think. But she's even here helping us organize all of this tonight. And one of the reasons for that is because she knows all of these kids. It's amazing, the kids that she knows and the impact and influence that she has had on these kids for so many years. So I would just like to say a big special thank you publicly to Nancy for everything that she has provided for so many years. Come on out, Nance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on with our business tonight. We have no personnel items. We have no unfinished business. We do have new business, and that will start with a legislative update. So we invited all of our local legislators to join us tonight so we can thank them for the work that they've done for us. We had 2 join us tonight. We are thankful to all 4. We do not care who or what they affiliate with, because we're thankful for the work that you do in our community for our schools and listening to our parents and the advocacy that is tireless. And that's why we're happy to have you here speaking. And in that same vein, I'll just share that tonight is not a night to throw questions out. It's a moment of gratitude. So, Dr. Thomas, do you have more to share?
I'll just say that I'm very appreciative of the 2 gentlemen that we see here tonight and the other reps who could not join us for your tireless and countless hours that you've spent down at the Capitol advocating for what is best for students. I've spoken with many of you, or both of you, many times, and I know it's not an easy task. I think people talk about the role of the superintendency being challenging. I don't know how you do what you do. So maybe one day we can shadow each other and just, really get that deep empathy going. But thank you for what you do on behalf of our students, our community, our families, and looking forward to that partnership as we move forward to kind of understanding now that it's passed. What does it all mean? So.
Well, thank you, Superintendent Thomas, Madam Chair, and directors. My name is Eric Pratt. I'm the state senator for most of Scott County, Senate District 54, which includes Shakopee, Prior Lake, and Jordan. Most of the time I have to be pretty neutral about my affiliation, but I'm proud to be a Laker. Graduating way too many years ago, and the parent of 2 Laker graduates. Before I get started, I just, and let Ben introduce himself, I just want to say thank you for your service. I sat in the chair that you sat in, and I had a little bit of a deja vu moment tonight, because when I was on the board, we started Laker Pride. When I was on the board, we started the trap team and made it a letter eligible sport. We started Patrons of the Arts. We started adaptive sports and the robotics team, and it's fun to see that the decisions that you make have a legacy to them, and so thank you for keeping those traditions alive.
My name is Representative Ben Bakeberg. I have the privilege to serve Prior Lake, Jordan, a portion of Shakopee, and the surrounding townships. Thank you for inviting us to be here tonight. Just to give you a little legislative overview, and I think Dr. Thomas hit the nail on the head. we're unpacking the ramifications of the session, not only from a school standpoint, but just across the board. And when I share in a little bit, I'll give you my perspective as a representative, but I'm also going to give you my perspective as a middle school principal. For people in the audience that don't know, that's my normal job, is a middle school principal. And I joked with someone at the Capitol, they said, you know, is it interesting? Is there some correlate between middle school behavior and behavior at the Capitol? And shockingly, there's a lot of correlation. So yeah, I would echo what Senator Pratt said. I've never sat in the chair of a board member, but I have sat in the chair of a principal and a teacher and a coach, and I've seen the impact of decisions that are made at the board table. And that's really one of the reasons I got involved, because I saw decisions being made that people didn't truly understand the impact from a legislative standpoint. So I wanted to be a voice for educators. But I really wanted to take a moment and just thank you for your work, because I think you as school board members have the most difficult elected official position. Because when you make a decision and then you go to Lunds and Byerly's and you're getting your groceries, that 5-minute, hey, I'm gonna run to the store quick, turns into an hour later. And your spouse is like, where were you? What have you been doing? You know, none of you have had that, I can tell. So I would just thank you for your service, but I also want to thank you for your advocacy as well. You put together a very robust legislative agenda to advocate for the needs, which makes our job very, very much easier. Not very easy, much easier to be able to articulate with clarity what the needs of the people that we represent are. So I want to thank you and just give you a shout out for the legislative agenda you put together. And it allowed us to be able to accurately advocate for the needs. So with that,
Please go ahead.
all right. So I think, and I think this is, it's great that we have a lot of people here, because there's a lot of information, a lot of talk around education, about historic investments in education. And the most, I've had a lot of conversations, and someone just said, Ben, can you just kind of break it down simple for me? And I said, you know, and the easiest analogy that I came up with was this session, there were historic investments in education, but it's similar to if I gave Senator Pratt $1,000, but I told him this is how you need to spend it. So I think it's important that the community understand that a lot of the funds that the school board is going to make decisions on, it's been dictated how they are going to spend it. But I think it is important that we talk about some of the good things that happened in the session. There's a 4% and 2% formula increase, so there's more money coming into the district. The planning for the board is going to be helped with the inflation, with the formula being indexed to inflation. It's capped at 3%. The 40% cross-subsidy for special ed, that's a federal mandate that tells them that they have to provide services, but it's not funded from the federal level, so the state is picking up that. There's increased funding for English language learners, students. Half of the students in our state cannot read, so there were investments in literacy, and that's really, really important. Frank Hornstein, he's the chair of the Transportation Committee, and it was probably the highlight of the session for me. We had a Holocaust survivor come and testify, and it was powerful. And Chair Hornstein has a bill that was in the final bill about Holocaust and Indigenous education. And it's really learning about Holocaust and Indigenous genocide education. So all of the genocides that have happened, we learn them and we study them so we don't repeat them. And it's not divisive, it's what we should be doing in schools. And one of my previous districts, we took our students to Auschwitz. and it was powerful standing on the grounds of Auschwitz for those students. And Chair Hornstein has just an amazing story of his family's tragedy with the Holocaust, and he took that and turned it into something good. And then there's increased support for mental health, which is, regardless of where we're at from a political persuasion, we need to address the mental health of our students. So there are a number of concerning provisions that I believe are going to make your job more difficult. And I say that because sometimes when you have to make a difficult decision as the board, you have no other option than the decision before you. So there are over 65 mandates, there are curriculum mandates, there are student discipline mandates. If you follow me on social media, I got a little bit fiery in some of the committee meetings about the discipline pieces, because that's a place where I'm passionate about as a middle school principal, about teaching kids the expected behaviors. And then there's a mandate about menstrual products in all 4th through 12th grade bathrooms. And I think the piece about that one is we've solved that at the local level. We've solved that in every building that I've been in about how to meet the physical needs of kids. There's the unemployment insurance is something that is a great concept to be able to pay our hourly workers, but the concern is it is mandated, and what does that mean down the line for Prior Lake Savage Schools budgets after that money that has been allocated runs out? And I think the major piece that was the big concerns is about $51 million to nonprofit groups. And what I believe should happen is that money should go to the local school districts, and then some of those nonprofits are amazing organizations. You would hire them to service your kids, but that money should come to you, and then you can hire those organizations. And then the other piece is about $33 million increase in the Department of Education budget. That's a 21% increase in the Department of Education budget. That's concerning to me. There are other pieces outside of the education bill with the terms and conditions of employment, earned sick and safe time, paid family medical leave, and those are really good ideas in theory to help take care of our employees and our workers, but it's the cost of those and the burden that it puts on you as a local district, and then what that will force you to do from a budget standpoint, decision-making down the line. As Dr. Thomas talked about, we tried to really reach out and partner with superintendents, school boards, teachers, principals across the state of Minnesota. And one of the common themes that I heard was we need funding and we need flexibility. Please don't tell us how to do things in Prior Lake, because the needs of Prior Lake are very different than the needs of Proctor. And if we do a blanket approach, it's not what's best for the kids of our community. So I firmly believe that we need to work together, regardless of political affiliation, to support our kids and to support our schools, not adding mandates and the divide that is obvious in our country. One thing I would say is that this is based from bipartisan data. I was the chief author of the House Education Bill, and Prior Lake Savage would have received $504 more per student over the 2-year biennium, which would equate to about $4.4 million in additional revenue. It's funding and flexibility. And some of those concerns that I outlined, that's the difference in the bills. I could go for a long time and talk about it, but I won't do that. But I look forward to growing our partnership. I want to thank you again for the great work you've done. Many of you have been in my office. We've talked, we've had coffee, and I could care less what party you're from as long as we're working together for kids. As long as we're focused on students, then we can work together. I've been in education my entire career. I'm getting older and older. The bifocals are coming out. But every single educator that I know went into education because they want to love and serve kids. That's it. I want to thank you for the opportunity to join you tonight. I'll turn it over to Senator Pratt.
Well, you can tell why we love having Ben around. He brings an interesting perspective to the legislature as someone who is often has to implement these new programs. I chaired the Education Committee. I was ranking member for my first term, and I can tell you that a lot of my thoughts on the education, and I think Ben signed them up very, very well, is making sure that we're focusing on the needs of kids. And it's really simple. We want kids to be successful in the classroom. We want them to have great teachers. We want stable and reliable funding. And we want parent and community involvement. And that seems to be the mix that we need to get to. Now, I tend to work, I no longer serve on the education committees, but I'm the ranking member on finance, as well as on the Jobs and Economic Development Committee. And, Ben touched a little bit on some of the concerns that I have that affect schools. I've talked to a number of superintendents who have said they are concerned that even with the record funding that has been put towards education, they're still going to have to make budget cuts because of the mandates that Ben talked about. Just in paid family and medical leave, the way it was implemented, it's been implemented in a number of states. We chose probably the most expensive option in the state of Minnesota compared to, say, New Hampshire or Connecticut and some of the others that, even New York, that have gone more with a public-private partnership. Where we used to fund those just kind of as a pay-as-you-go type of program, now we have a very strict program that's going to be diverting money out of your budget into that program. And I know that well because I'm the chief author of the paid family, the private-public partnership paid family medical leave bill in the Senate. Roughly, it's going to cost schools about $60 million statewide just to comply with that one program. Again, I mentioned that Ben and I have very similar points of view, and my point of view was molded sitting in the seats that you're in, knowing the decisions that you have to make, knowing the constituencies you serve. We want to make sure that you have as much authority as possible to make the right decisions for this community. Because we are not like any other community, and no other communities like us. And that's what makes education and our schools such a wonderful place to be, and the roles that you guys serve. But I do want to thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for coming to the Capitol and seeing us. And I think we'd take any questions if you have any. Mary says no. All right. Well, thank you guys very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have our co-curricular year-end report. So we'll move on to that with Activities Director Marshall.
Yeah, so that was a report that was kind of given earlier, where I went through the results of the spring. We had made an adjustment this past year where the report is coming out on a quarterly basis instead of just one at the end of the year. So in December, you would have heard the report from the fall. In April, you would have heard the report from the winter, and now this past one that I went through earlier was the report from this spring. So thank you for that. Any questions in regards to that report or to any of the information that was in there? Okay.
No, I guess not. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is our MSHSL membership resolution and video. So the board has been requested to watch the video and approve the resolution by roll call vote. And I think our band is maybe highlighted in this, if I have that right.
Yep, so as Chair Crosby mentioned, this is a video that's been put out by the Minnesota State High School League, kind of recapping what some of their goals are as we move into next year. Once we've watched that video, then I will make a request to pass the resolution to join the Minnesota State High School League for the 2023-24 school year.
all about sportsmanship, right? Coaches coach, officials officiate, our players play, and our fans cheer. That is the partnership that we're looking forward to. It's all around safety, it's all around sportsmanship, and it's all around having a great time in our facilities.
The Minnesota State High School League is a dynamic partnership of more than 600 schools, reaching all communities and corners of the state. Our mission is to provide educational opportunities in fine arts and athletics for all students. Everything we do is focused on supporting, growing, and improving our students' experiences through activities. As we move into a new school year, our ongoing work is focused on three main efforts. Our top priority is to promote and support safe, respectful, and inclusive environments for participation and competition. We want all of our high schools to provide activities and events that are free from discrimination, harassment, and marginalization. That's why the Minnesota State High School League recently led a collaborative effort of 7 educational organizations across the state. Together We Make a Difference was designed to amplify the voices and advance the vision of our students to ensure respectful and safe schools and environments.
After attending the conference, I really hope that as a small school we're more inclusive and we include everybody and that everybody gets to be involved and find what they enjoy. The code of conduct was basically treating everybody with respect, the same respect you want to receive. Being kind, not like
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, that's a
Oh, here we go.
commercial. Yeah.
being rude to somebody because they are not from the same background as you, like ethnics, religion, be inclusive.
It's important to feel safe because within that you're able to perform the way you want to and you're able to give the results you want to. In my personal opinion, when I'm not comfortable, I'm not giving all I can.
Playing in an environment where like you feel comfortable, you feel safe, you're going to be playing at your best because you don't have to worry about other distractions.
It takes a team of dedicated adults to provide the kind of programming our students deserve. That's why we're focused on recruiting, retaining, and supporting our coaches, officials, and administrators.
As an education-based activities director, there's nobody more important than the coach or advisor for our students, whether it's in the fine arts or athletics, because we know that each child is one caring adult away from changing their path of their life.
If you look at or listen to any successful person talk about how they got there, they never did it alone. There's always a mentor, and so we need those types of leaders in our schools today to help our young people understand what it means to be a strong, supportive person within their community.
I enjoy officiating for the people. The people that I work with, the camaraderie with them is the thing that makes it enjoyable. There's coaches that make it enjoyable. There are students that make it enjoyable. We're somebody to help make the game better. We're there to make the athletic contest better.
We're always looking for new officials. I think just from gaining awareness and visibility on the role of officiating and how important it is. So definitely I encourage anybody that is interested in officiating to reach out, and we have a lot of resources and a team to help out.
Sometimes the most enduring lessons our students learn happen through activities beyond the classroom. So it's our goal to focus on enhancing the education of students through a broad range of opportunities that extend the traditional curriculum.
When alumni come and talk to me, the one thing I always hear is, they remember those big moments, but they also remember what led up to them. Everything that they've done to prepare and how those coaches and those experiences have helped prepare them.
These events and experiences will stay with our students for their entire life. The relationships that they build in these extracurricular arts and athletic activities, the competition, the sportsmanship that they learn, all of these things will help them be successful citizens, help them be successful employees, business owners, and just positive contributing members to society.
At the Minnesota State High School League, it's about more than membership, it's about partnership. Because when our member schools commit to common principles and expectations, we all share the responsibility to provide safe, respectful, and inclusive activities for all of our students.
To do our best for student athletes and participants, we need to be good partners to one another and collaborate with other schools and the Minnesota State High School League.
As school districts, we know our students best. We know our families and communities and caregivers best. And to partner with the State High School League is really to work collectively to make sure that everyone participating in these wonderful events has a safe, welcoming environment where they can thrive and be successful.
I'm just super excited about where we are and also where we can go and continuing to have these conversations to provide great high school experiences for kids.
Nothing is more important than the well-being of our students, and participation in activities is a great way to enhance our students' overall health.
I think it's really, really important that every high school student finds something to be involved in. Finding some way to get involved in your school and in your community is so important. It not only positively benefits your mental health, but helps you improve as a person, helps you grow, helps you make connections with other people.
These activities have helped shape who I am because it makes me understand the importance of being in something, and it has helped me for the future because these activities help you gain skills such as time management and communication.
Giving students these valuable opportunities is the mission of the Minnesota State High School League. And looking around the state this year, we've seen high participation numbers, packed venues, and enthusiastic support from school communities. And together, we have a bright future ahead. On behalf of the Minnesota State High School League, I want to thank everyone in all of our member schools for your continued active support, because it's about more than membership, it's about partnership.
How to escape.
So again, a little bit of a recap, kind of where the high school league is, what the high school league is looking to do moving forward. And again, an annual resolution is before you to become a member of the Minnesota State High School League. Again, this would be for the 2023 to 24 school year. By signing this membership, by being involved in this membership, it allows all of our students, both in athletics and activities, the ability to participate in everything that the high school league sponsors, which is all of our postseason play, sections, state tournaments. They're the governing body when it comes to high school sports and high school activities. So the request is there to be able to put forth passing of this resolution. I'll take any questions that you may have.
Before we start our discussion, can I get a motion to approve the resolution, please?
So made.
By Director Burnick, and a second?
Second.
By Director France, and I'll open it up for discussion. And questions?
I have a question. Actually, I have a couple. Have there been any changes in any of the policies recently that the Minnesota State High School League, have they brought forth any changes that would maybe cause concern or anything that we should be aware of that has changed in recent, either this past year or recent years?
Sure. The high school league is governed by a handbook, and in that handbook is the listing of all of the bylaws that they follow. There have been no changes to any of the bylaws. There's been nothing new that has come forward in terms of what that might look like. The two biggest changes that happened were part of Rep Assembly, the Representative Assembly, which happened this past spring. Those changes involved, one, the addition of boys volleyball, which is a pretty significant change that some schools didn't necessarily agree with, because it does, cause a greater strain financially. It causes a greater strain on facilities, but it did pass the Rep Assembly, and so adding boys volleyball will happen in the 24-25 school year. The other piece that was passed at the Rep Assembly this past spring was the addition of bylaws specific for adapted sports. Right now, all of our adapted sports fall under the bylaws of non-adapted sports. So for example, adapted floor hockey, they follow the bylaws of hockey. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So it was passed that they could go ahead and construct their own bylaws for adapted sports as well. So those are the two biggest changes that did happen through the Representative Assembly this past spring.
Can I just go down my questions? Okay. I've heard some concern throughout the community. So I have a question that I've heard on several instances. This question is, how many transgender students in Prior Lake Savage area schools have gone through the process to participate in a sport that is with the opposite sex from which they were assigned at birth?
Sure. So I think Director Bullion is referencing bylaw 300. And the bylaw 300 is the specific transgender eligibility appeal procedure for transgender students. That was developed or enacted in 2016, I believe. So nothing new has come of that bylaw. That bylaw is still the same as it was in 2016. The appeal process for transgender students would mean that in any eligibility instance, whether it be a transfer, whether it be academic eligibility, the schools are the ones that make the initial determination. And so when that determination is made, again, at the local level, if a family or student wishes to appeal that decision then goes on to the high school league. So the way that it's written specifically is that a transgender student can participate in a sport of which he or she was assigned at birth, and be able to do that without a problem. If a transgender student wishes to participate in a sport or activity in which they weren't assigned at birth, but maybe it's a sport that, or the gender that they identify with, that's when it becomes, comes to the school at that point to make that determination. That determination, and again, to answer your question, how many have gone through that process at Prior Lake? 0. We haven't had any students who have gone through that piece who have requested to be able to participate in a sport or activity different than the gender in which they were assigned at birth.
Thank you. My last question, what would it mean if Prior Lake Savage, what would it mean to our athletes, to our students, if Prior Lake Savage area schools were not part of the Minnesota State High School League? What would that look like?
Yep, so the high school league governs all of the postseasons. They govern all of sections and all of state tournaments. And so we would not be eligible to participate in any sort of sections or state tournaments. So the question then becomes, what happens during the regular season? We're part of the South Suburban Conference. The South Suburban Conference more than likely would vote us out, would not allow us to be a part of the conference anymore. And the reason for that is because any event that they schedule with a team that is outside of the Minnesota State High School League doesn't count as an actual event during that time. There are a number of schools out there who, not a number, very few schools, but some of the schools that are some of these private prep schools who have kind of a higher level play, more of a national schedule for certain sports, who don't necessarily join the high school league and are not able to get competitions because schools won't schedule with them because it doesn't count as one of those events. So we really would not have any sort of sports or activities if that happened. The other thing that I would really believe would happen is that we would have a mass exodus of students out of the district. Any student who's looking forward to participating in any sort of high school league sponsored sport or activity would leave our district to be able to go to another district where they could then be a part of those teams.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
I just have one question. Is there a cost to being part of the Minnesota State High School League, or do part of the dues go towards the membership?
Yep, there is a cost. The cost is, it's $160 per activity. So we pay that. We once this gets passed, then we go through and determine which activities that we're going to be participating in. So.
I have a question. Just following up on a prior question from Director Bullion, or your response to that question with respect to, say, the change that allowed volleyball, for example, to be part of the Minnesota State High School League. You mentioned that there's a financial burden to that and how certain schools or certain districts weren't necessarily in support of that. Can we tease that out just a little bit more? I'm not quite understanding
Sure.
the financial piece.
Yep.
Just
So here at
Prior
Prior Lake, we've had boys volleyball for a number of years.
Right.
It's a part of our programming. We pay for the coaches. We have the facilities that are available here. One of the things that happens when sometimes a new activity gets added is schools have the choice. As Director Atkinson asked about the cost, you actually pay a fee for those sports and activities that you choose to sign up for. So I think what happens though is that they haven't decided where they're going to place boys volleyball, whether it's going to be a fall sport or a spring sport. There's a task force that's taking care of that this summer. But obviously there are, I think, some smaller school districts when they don't necessarily have the facilities or the locations to be able to do that. And so when it did go to the rep assembly, and for those who don't know, this was, I think, the third or fourth time that it went to rep assembly before it passed. And people have seen the growth of the sport, and I think that's one of the main reasons why it did pass this year, is because it has been growing and it's been gaining a lot of steam, and it's very exciting. And the one thing that I will say about boys volleyball that I think is unique is that there's a lot of boys who go out for volleyball who don't necessarily participate in other sports or activities. It's a very unique group of guys who come out and really play for the love of it, because they haven't been playing it their whole lives either. You know, I mean, this is something that's brand new to them. So it's very raw. When you look at boys volleyball versus girls volleyball, it's very raw. You know, they struggle a little bit with some of those pieces, but it's one of those things that there are schools that, there's a financial burden when it comes to having to pay for coaches and transportation and some of those kinds of things that fall back on the districts. And so there are some concerns sometimes on being able to add certain sports activities because of that.
Sure, thank you. Just kind of continuing on that theme, earlier we recognized in the Laker Pride one of the individuals who participates in badminton, for example. We don't necessarily have a team, but they're able to participate in a different team. So from that perspective, is there as much of a cost?
No, there is not, definitely not. I mean, thanks to all of you, and anytime we have a cooperative agreement that comes up, it does need school board approval. Again, being able to provide those opportunities for students is fantastic. And badminton is another one of those sports that you don't see a lot of girls going out for badminton who maybe participate in other sports. So when you're able to set up a cooperative agreement that allows, a certain number of students to be able to participate, it is something that's fantastic. Now, again, with that piece, the main cost that happens to us is that we do have to still register that as a sport, with the Minnesota State High School League. But because it's a cooperative agreement where Burnsville is actually the home school, they take care of the transportation costs and they take care of the coaches' costs as well too, since they already have a team and a program in place.
Okay, perfect. That's what I thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, well, this one will go by roll call vote, and this is for the approval of the membership, the resolution to be members of the Minnesota State High School League. I'll start with Director Atkinson.
Thank you. Before I cast my vote, I'd like to share a concern that was brought to my attention by my constituents. The concern is regarding students' participation in a sport based on their gender versus biological sex. I understand that MSHSL has a bylaw in place that allows parents to submit an appeal, and with the approval, the student can participate in a sport or activity based on their gender identity versus their biological sex. This is not a new ruling, as you stated, and has been in place since 2015. What is new is the large increase of students experiencing rapid onset gender dysphoria. My understanding is that MSHSL creates their bylaws based on the Minnesota Human Rights Act and the interpretation of the Anoka Hennepin case. With currently only one high school league in our state, our school really has no choice but to join MSHSL. And for this reason, I encourage parents to reach out to their legislative representatives and share their concerns, as Minnesota does not currently have a Fairness in Women's Sports Act, which would ultimately protect our female student athletes. As a former high school athlete, I have great respect for Title IX federal civil rights law, which brought equality and athletic opportunities for girls and women. But my understanding is that Title IX is in the process of being rewritten by our federal government to include gender identity, with a release date planned for October. This has raised concerns with parents in our district who have daughters competing in sports such as swimming, tennis, track and field, and volleyball, where a transgender student's physical anatomy would give them an unfair and unsafe advantage, particularly in girls' sports. I understand the importance of students' participation in extracurricular activities, as we saw the impact during COVID when students' participation was restricted in after-school activities, and the negative impact we are now seeing that it has had on mental health. I believe participation in extracurricular activities is critical part of building character, physical fitness, mental and physical health, teamwork, and leadership skills. I understand the importance of renewing our membership with MSHSL, but also feel that we have an obligation as a district to ensure parents know their rights and ensure that we are creating a safe and fair experience for all students.
Director
I also-
Atkinson, you have 2 minutes to speak, so
Okay, my
if you can
understanding, I
wrap it
have
up, that'd be
10 per
great.
Robert's rules, so I'll finish up here, okay?
Thank you.
I also believe it is important for parents to understand that while we are an independent school district, we cannot control what other districts' decision is on who a student may participate against at a Minnesota State competition. As Lakers, we are fortunate to have incredible coaches and admin who have gone out of their way to ensure all students feel safe and welcome, regardless of how they identify, while ensuring all students feel loved and respected. My hope is that as a district, we will continue to stand up for our female students when they are feeling marginalized on the basis of sex and make the proper accommodations for girls who are uncomfortable sharing private spaces with biological males and advocating for them when they are forced to compete against a biological boy at state for scholarship opportunities. Female sports should be for female athletes. This concern was brought forth by my constituents, and in order to respect and represent the community I was elected to serve, I would like to opt out of signing the MSHSL membership renewal and vote no on the renewal.
Director Velazquez?
Aye.
Before I cast my vote, well, I will go at the end, I am sorry. Director
Aye.
France?
Aye.
Director Burnick? Director
Aye.
Bullion? Director Olsted?
Absolutely, yes.
I'll just share that I am no expert on, and I want to share this from the perspective of why I'm voting the way I'm voting. I am no expert on transgender athletes. I don't pretend to be. I will leave that to the experts, and I believe the MSHSL is following the Minnesota Human Rights Act, who I'm sure were quite involved with that community in forming that law. So my vote is aye. That passes 6-1. Thank you for your time and sharing the video.
Thank you.
I will move on to the child nutrition update with Director Malone. Yes? Yes, okay, sorry. Director of Child Nutrition Services, Malone. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, Chair Crosby and Board of Directors and Dr. Thomas. I'm going to try and find my presentation here. Okay. So my name is Emily Malone. I'm here to give you guys an update, kind of a glimpse at next year and an overview of what we went through in 22-23. It was, although not met with its challenges, I am happy to report we were able to get back to many of the fun things that we like to do in child nutrition. So we will move forward with that. Okay, so these are some of our amazing child nutrition staff. Like I said, we were able to get back to some of the things that we love doing. So the top middle picture there is my staff, some of the managers who do most of our catering. So there's catering pictures and just a lot of pictures of camaraderie and the staff coming back together. So that was really fun. It was by far the hardest beginning to a school year I've ever had in terms of staffing. But I'm happy to report that, you know, once we reached 2023 and the year turned over, we are sitting pretty good. So our biggest need is at the high school. We have 10 openings currently at the high school. We have 2 between the 2 middle schools and 2 at the elementary schools so far. So we'll start posting positions for 23-24 the first week of August. All right, so we got to get back into the lunchrooms and do as much learning as we possibly could. We brought back some of our programs that had to take a break during COVID, such as Try It Tuesdays. So Try It Tuesdays is when we have some sort of a try it for students. It might be a funky vegetable or a different kind of fruit or a flavor or a cooking style. So, and it's, they get to try it with no strings attached, and they can just sample it without putting, without committing to it, I should say. We were even able to get, that bottom right picture there is some high school students from the Nutrition 101 class. We partner with them, and they get to come in and serve those Try It Tuesdays in most of our elementary schools, and students are much more amicable to trying things when an older kid is serving it. So that's really successful. We like that. At Five Hawks, we implemented the tower gardens that we slowly, it was a really slow, long process with COVID interrupting us. But the plan is to have tower gardens, hopefully, in many of the schools. So we piloted it last year at Five Hawks, and we were super excited with that. Students loved to show off their vegetables and herbs that they grew. We were able to start or go back to our corn husking relay day, and Casey's Sweet Corn in Prior Lake donates the corn for that. And then we started a new program called World Wednesdays, just kind of grassroots. Somebody called and said they'd like to, share their family recipe. So we were able to do that a couple of times this year. And that picture with all the students at the lunch table is when they were learning how to use chopsticks on World Wednesday. So. So we were able to, one of my highlights from last year, I don't know if you remember, is that Farm to School was something that we were able to keep doing. But we were able to now, again, get students back out to farms. So this is some 3rd or 4th graders. I believe they were from Five Hawks as well, going out to one of our farmers for a field trip. There's some Thompson Hillcrest apples from Elko, and that bottom middle is one of our new partnerships with the Hmong farmers. Those are sweet potatoes. We did not know what they were for a little while when we got them, and did not know what to do with them. So we get all kinds of funky vegetables from our farmers. So we also were able to be a part of bringing back some of our gardens back to life. So some of these are like a late harvest at Grainwood of lettuces, and then 2 outside ones are the high school garden. One of our farmers came to help us plant those lettuces at Grainwood, so that's been exciting. And then we were able to get back out there and keep telling our story. So we were on WCCO twice, highlighting our Try It Tuesdays and some of our different funky partnership, like pairings of foods that we do. And then that, plus when we had Carol Levin come to Hamilton Ridge Elementary, we strategically put that poster back there that says "Know Your Farmer," and we received national attention for that. So Tray Talk is a national online blog that called us and wanted to know about our Know Your Farmer, and then they wanted to know about our microgreens and all of the things that were featured on that Carol Levin segment. So that was good stuff. So really happy to be able to do those things that we love and teach kids where food comes from, and help encourage lifelong healthy eating habits. So looking forward to next year really quickly. We will continue to grow all of our current programs, and we're really excited about that. We have a new assistant director, Christine McIntyre, excuse me. She started June 26th. And then we also got kind of a record number of grant totals. We got $160,000 of grant money to spend for next year. And that allowed us to put out RFPs for to make relationships with new partners. And so we have 8 local farmers that are new, including maple syrup, honey, and then 4 cattle farms that are local. So we'll have local beef on our trays next year. Yeah. So, any questions?
Question. Well, first, I have a
Yeah.
bone to pick because thanks to you, my husband and I could not get our kids to try anything new for the first several years of their life. And they go to school, and there you are with World Wednesday and Try It Tuesday. So we love that. Our family just loves that. And I know that I've received a lot of compliments about our food program. I think it's just outstanding. So great job to you and your team. My question at the high school level. So I know when we're not part of the program at the high school level, and that decision was made by the students forgive me, when?
2015.
2015,
Yep,
so
May.
it's been a while. Is that something that comes up for discussion again, or some kind of renewal isn't the right word, but is that something that comes up for kind of another discussion at any point, or is it just kind of, this is kind of how it is?
Sure.
Students come and go, like the different, 4
Yeah.
years students, and I just wondered that.
Well, I review it, and not only annually, but in all of my financial reports, yearly. And so when we originally went off in 2015, it was a one-year pilot, and we asked for an extension, and at the 2-year mark, the board said, you don't need to keep asking for this anymore.
Okay.
Otherwise, I don't know of anything formal.
Okay.
As far as that goes. It's a
A
good question,
curiosity
though.
question more than
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, I look at the financials of it.
Yeah.
And I will continue, so.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Can I piggyback on Director Olstad's question? With the free lunches across the board, can you just share again why we made that decision in 2015? I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for the food program. I think you do an amazing job. But just in case people aren't aware.
Sure. Yeah, yep. So in 2014, that was my first year in the district, I was the manager at the high school, and a group of students came to me with a petition that I brought to my director at the time, stating that they disagreed with the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of 2008, Michelle Obama's Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act. That Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act led to Smart Snack regulations. And Smart Snack regulations limit portion sizes and sodium levels and, naturally occurring sodium levels even. And they really didn't feel like that was meeting the needs of our active student body. So they had numbers saying, 72% of our student body is in after-school activities, before-school activities, and we do not feel like we are getting enough calories. So they wanted more choice, and they wanted more whole, minimally processed foods. Things have changed a lot, and now they're going back to those sodium levels again. But at the time, the idea was that they were going to, for example, reduce sodium levels in a piece of chicken to the point where it was lower than what it was naturally occurring in a chicken. So, Tyson was dehydrating chicken and then rehydrating it back again to get rid of the sodium. And that was making the chicken nuggets and chicken tenders and everything that was available for schools highly processed. And so they knew that. They did all of the homework, and they knew that that was happening. They knew that a reduced fat bag of Doritos had a laundry list of ingredients that was even more than a Doritos bag had, so they had done their homework, and they really wanted more whole foods and more bigger portion sizes and more choice. So, yeah.
Thanks for that background.
Yeah, and I guess I'm going to piggyback on that super quickly and say that I was around during those times with students in that building, and I would say I'm super impressed that even back then we were listening to student voices.
Yeah.
And that we don't just say, oh, well, that's the way it has to be. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, we took a risk. Students are good risk takers. So they kind of nudged us, we took a risk, and it's worked really well. So they seem to be happy.
And I would just add that I think it's important to add that you did some surveying this fall, or spring as
Correct.
well, on looking at the current meal program, and maybe you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, we spoke to students. We had a couple of informational tables speaking to students, and just kind of gave them the two scenarios. We said, hey, your predecessors, 8 to 10 years ago started thinking about this, and this is why we have this meal program that we have today. If we choose to keep this program, this is, what we get to do, and if we choose to go on to the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act of Minnesota, this is what our program would look like. So we did some education around it, and our students are so smart. They knew exactly what we were talking about, so.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I had a couple students contact me and say, oh my gosh, it's not going away. We love our lunches. So that's great. When will you be communicating to parents on the change? It's particularly for the high school, because I've had a couple people ask me as well.
Sure, yeah. So we are very close to putting out a little informational video that will explain both
That's
and
great.
will show the difference. So, very close.
I'm going to jump to another topic here and talk about the staffing levels. And
Yeah.
I appreciate the struggles that happened at the beginning of this past school year. I will say, however, that the opportunity to work in the cafeterias, as well as what other parents have said, what other volunteers have said, was a fantastic experience
Yeah.
at all levels of the schools. And the only thing I would say is, if you do run into staffing issues going forward, please don't hesitate to reach out, because I think a lot of people actually enjoyed it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that feedback. Yeah, we have gotten a lot of great feedback from parents and community members that got to help us. I was looking at my board report from last year, and some of the comments from parents were, I think everybody should do this. Everybody should get in their student's classroom, or their student's lunchroom, excuse me, and see what it takes to put lunch on the table. So we love it.
Thank you.
It's our favorite.
Thanks for the update. It's fun to hear all that's going on. and
Thank you. Thanks for your support.
Thank you. No board action is needed, of course, so. Next on our agenda is an amendment to the 23-24 school calendar that will be presented by Director Edwards. Yes?
Yes, so you see.
And no board action is needed.
No board action is needed. Just wanted to bring you up to speed and give you an update on the adjustments that were made to the calendar. Most notably, the legislative session that resulted in the identification of Juneteenth as a holiday, and then elementary conferences. This was our first time this past school year in having the sequence of when conferences fell. And based upon the feedback from our teachers, there was a desire to move it back slightly, just about a week to 10 days back, because of alignment with middle of the year assessment data and wanting to have that completed prior to engaging in conferences with the first set of parents. When it was in early February, we weren't complete with all of our mid-year assessment data. So that's the reason for that request, that change.
Okay. Any questions from the board regarding the
I
calendar?
have one question. Dr. Edwards, when is the calendar work done, or the guidance, work/guidance for the 24-25 school year? When is that done? And what, if any, input does the board, I know that, I think we approve changes, or we approve the calendar, but what, if any, guidance does the board actually give toward calendar?
Yeah, so our previous sequence on that for the past couple of years and long before that, but I can speak to the last 2 years specifically because I was overseeing that and bringing that forward, was we brought a group of staff together, to teaching staff from each level, with administrative staff from each level, looked at the calendar, made a recommendation, brought it before, this past year, brought it before Teaching and Learning Advisory in November, and then brought it to the board in December. So our typical sequence has been approval at the December board meeting for the upcoming school year.
Just for clarification, when you said you bring it to the teaching and learning, is that the committee?
Yeah.
The committee,
that-
okay.
Yep, that was formerly known as the District Curriculum Advisory, now the Teaching and Learning.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
Dr. Edwards, I know for this past year, there were some concerns that were brought up with respect to commencement on a Thursday instead of a Friday. And one of the reasons for that was more of a contractual issue. Looks like commencement is on Thursday this year as well, assuming that that's also the case in this current calendar year.
That is correct. And, that raises a great question that I'll admit I need to follow up with Dr. Bezic and his team at the high school regarding feedback around how that particular change to the calendar impact. I didn't hear a lot of feedback specifically myself, but I want to check in with Dr. Bezic on that because we did say that we would gather feedback around that. I know, again, it was a contractual issue, but it also benefited having a makeup day for graduation as well. If we would have had inclement weather, that would have impacted it, but which we didn't, fortunately. Had a beautiful night.
It was a gorgeous night. Thank you.
Okay, great. The next item on our agenda is the approval of PLSAS policies for the parent-student handbook. That will be presented by Dr. Edwards for a vote by the board.
Yeah, so just to bring everybody up to speed, this is the second year that we have done this, last year being the first in which we brought a standardized parent-student handbook with relation to policies forward for your review in July. The components of this then go into the respective level handbooks, the elementary, middle, and high school. But prior to that, we had, each level had their own handbook, and we didn't necessarily have a guarantee that all of the key elements that needed to be contained within that were there. So that's what you have in front of you. Additionally, we made that active with hyperlinks to policies so that as policy reviews occur, and we will actually have quite a bit of that going on with policies that some of which were recently adopted at the legislative level with different implementation dates. So as the policy committee works on that, then the handbook will change accordingly and be interactive to do so. But what you see here in the packet tonight are the standardized policies and references that are necessary to be included in. So we've looked at MSBA as the guide for what that is. And they recently updated their guidance on that related to the most recently completed legislative session.
Before we open it up for discussion, can I get a motion to approve?
I mean.
By Director Olson. Can I get a second?
Second.
By Director Velazquez. Okay, any questions from directors or comments?
I would just ask, can you highlight any changes, changes that were made from this year to last year? Are they in here? Did I miss them?
There weren't substantive changes other than the updating of policies, and some of which we'll speak about later in the session or in the meeting tonight. So in terms of this particular document, it is simply updated to reflect that.
So if I'm correct, the language is the same as last year, except for the policies may have changed. Is that correct, or?
Yes, we did review to ensure that, again, the MSBA came out with has a handbook policy that we hadn't previously referenced. So we now have referenced that to ensure that all of the components. We had done some work with that in preparation for this past school year, but now we have updated that as well. So.
And is my understanding correct? So this is the master handbook, and then the elementary schools or middle schools will have their grade or
yeah,
level
related to
appropriate.
specific things such as parent drop-off, such as lunch schedule, such as other daily components of how it functions, how the building functions at the respective site level. Yep. But all of this will be standardized to be included as a part of that.
That was actually one of the questions I had when I looked at the cell phone, student use of cell phones, because I know we've been doing some other things in other buildings, and that wasn't necessarily called out in here, so.
Yep. That will be specific to the level where those adaptations will be made.
Okay.
And included in their communication.
Okay.
I do have a question with regards to is this going to, we kind of had this discussion before when we talked about this, but do you anticipate that next year the handbook be ready ahead of time and then go through the policy committee and then submit it to the board, or what is your role, or what do you anticipate is going to happen next year?
Yeah, I think part of which is why we made that change to make it interactive,
Right.
Because we know that different, there was a significant legislative session that has significant changes, and we want to make sure that the handbook reflects that. There may or may not be that circumstance next year. Tough to predict a little bit, but we also are reigniting the policy committee to review. So as they go through particularly the 500 and 600 policies, and I don't want to speak out of turn here for my colleague with regard to that, but as that committee does that work, we'll, and throughout the school year, adjustments may be made through the work of that committee, and then we would want those to be reflected immediately.
Other questions from board members?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Amy. That's fine.
I don't, I have a lot of notes in this section, and I don't want to take the time to turn this portion into like a study session and kind of talk about every little note that I made in reading the handbook. So I'm wondering if you could direct me on how, if I just set up a meeting with you, what would be the best course of action? You know, I'm just to say, you know, in the bullying prohibition, I just had some things underlined in there, not necessarily looking for changes or anything like that, but just kind of wanted to maybe talk through some things. Also, I had a comment in the distribution of information on school district property. It talked about more information being found in policy 904. And we had talked in a study session about adding policy 904 to a future board, to a future study session. I also made a note, like, you know, I think we've talked about having a cell phone policy and what that looks like going forward. Yeah, I just had some comments, and I don't know that this is the space.
Yeah, I would welcome that opportunity to visit with you on that, and my commitment to you would be then, depending on the level, if, for example, if it's leveled, I would bring it to that respective group of administrators to make sure that it's accounted for within the local, within that particular building or levels.
Yeah.
Student handbook and specified or possibly clearly laid out more clearly. In greater detail. Again, back to the cell phone example, I think is a great example where the middle school has been doing some different work around that, wanting to make sure that it's clearly reflected. So let's set up for that.
That would be great. My last comment was actually, Dr. Thomas, you've shared with myself, and I think you've even shared in board meetings, that you have a simple and effective approach and philosophy regarding correction. In our handbook, there's not a lot talking about the discipline, what that looks like. And whenever, at least in my opinion, I feel like if the expectations aren't clear, it's hard to follow them, whether you're a student or a parent wanting to know a little bit more. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I'll say to that real quickly with regard to, as we have moved forward now, going into next school year with each building having a dean, one at each elementary, one at each middle school, 2 at the high school is a continuation of that. Working with those teams of folks for alignment across our district, specifically, for example, at the K-5 level with our elementary deans, and at the now having 2 at the middle school to ensure consistency between the 2 buildings. Working with the respective administrative team, we're going to be engaging in that work here this summer in preparation for the launch of the school year. So giving greater clarity around that. And that's why I think it'll be helpful for us to have a follow-up conversation so I can bring those notes into those conversations.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think my 2 questions are quick. It looks like from I realize we're talking about this later in the meeting, but the bullying policy, that the legislature put in some more language, and they expanded on the definition of bullying. So I'm assuming we're going to update that here.
Correct.
That was, okay, that was my note. And then I just didn't know if under the surveys, we wanted to add the part about parent opt-outs. Unless I missed it. Did I miss it?
In the sub-policy we're going to be talking about with the updates to
I
the
suppose it is in
directory
the
and opt-out,
policy.
yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's it. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Okay. All right, all in favor of approving the PLSAS policies for parent-student handbooks?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Passes 7-0, almost like a roll call. Now we've got long-term facility maintenance with Director of Operations and Transportation. Director Delbo. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Crosby, Board Directors, Dr. Thomas. I have in your board packet a submitted LTFM plan, 10-year plan. We had a few changes this year. If you remember, earlier in the year, we found out Fish Point Road was going to be closed, so we bumped up some projects to take advantage of schools being closed, pools, and parking lots. So that impacted our plan quite a bit, because then we have to push things out further. One other thing, or a couple of things you'll notice different this year too, is because of the age of the building, we've added Hamilton and Bridges ALC to our 10-year plan that were not on there in previous years. They were too new. You'll also notice a focus of envelope work. We're in great shape on our roofs. We're getting caught up on parking lots, and now it's the rest of the outside of the building to keep moisture out and provide safe, clean buildings. And again, there are many changes to the 10-year plan. We focus on 2 years at a time because in 2 years, every year the plan changes. We focus on condition-based maintenance. Really proud of my staff for their handle on our buildings, and we work hard with finance to make sure that the projects we select, we can pay for. But again, it's a narrow focus of a couple of years. Wouldn't make a lot of sense to be looking 10 years out.
Okay,
Are there any questions I could answer?
thank you. Can I get a motion to approve?
So made.
By Director Bullion, and a second?
Second.
By Director Velazquez. Okay, we'll open it up to board directors for questions or comments, please.
I had a question. A couple of things. So you mentioned roof, and I know we went through a lot of work in the past 10 years or so replacing the roofs, but I did think that this building's roof wasn't done yet.
This building was done. This,
Oh.
this one does not have a built-up roof, however, Mary. It's, it's a bowling alley. And so we did put on not EPDM, but a plastic roof on, and we made some significant changes for the snow load, which also changed. But that's 20-year roof on here now.
Okay. And then I had a question about artificial turf, because I thought we were still leasing the artificial
So,
turf.
and that's current, but that's starting to age out, so we do have it highlighted on our plan. Whether that's LTFM or leasing, again, I can't answer that right now, but we definitely want to consider that. It's getting to the point where, the UV kills plastic, and, the tufts are coming down, and they're showing their age.
But is that part, that's what my question was, is it part of LTFM since we lease it? Do they just come in and replace it when we restart a new lease, or?
It would
how
be
does that-
another lease. So it was lease
Yeah.
levy.
Oh, yeah.
So, and Tammy, you can explain that a little better.
So we report that as a lease. We get additional levy dollars for that. It has to go towards that. I'll have to double check the timing of the lease. We have to report it every year to MDE, and I can't, right off the top of my head, I'm not sure what the ending date is, but I can check on that.
Okay, thanks. It's just that I'm not used to seeing it checked on here.
Yeah,
Because of the conditions. And then the other question I had was the tennis courts, because I know we just redid all the tennis courts when we redid the high school on the new construction and all that. And so I saw tennis courts, a check mark in the next couple years, and I thought, well, I don't know anything about clay tennis courts or how they work, so
Right.
I was just kind of curious about that.
So those courts are asphalt, and
Asphalt?
Asphalt, yep. So they do show cracks every few years. So, and we have done some repair work, but at some point, we're gonna have to take them out and start from scratch. It's a few years out, I think.
It was, and
Yeah.
I didn't know how long they lasted. I was just kind of surprised to see the check. I didn't remember seeing that checked as far as maintenance goes last year. And I could have just missed it, but
Yeah.
I didn't see it, so
Well,
that's why.
and the other thing is, it's interesting you said clay, because that's really what our problem is. We have clay soil at the high school, and it's, it moves a lot of water in that clay.
Okay, great, that was one of my questions.
Are there any other questions I can answer?
All right. All in favor of the long-term facility maintenance approval?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep, thank you.
Next, the board is requested to approve the response to the letter of non-concurrence that was presented by our American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, APAC. According to MDE, the response letter to APAC needs to be written and signed by the board chair 60 days after the presentation of the vote of non-concurrence. The presentation of non-concurrence was delivered by Ms. Erin Thinelk, APAC chair, on May 8th. 60 days would be July 8th. However, MDE approved getting the letter back to APAC after the board meeting this evening. Thank you, Director O.
All right.
Do we have any, do you want to introduce
Sure,
anything, or
yeah,
did
sure.
I steal your thunder?
Oh, no, it's all right. So the response letter, there outlined their three main concerns: the achievement gap, curriculum around Native education, and the ability to address bullying and any harassment that goes towards Native students there. In the letter, we outlined some positive steps that we're taking, and also stated some of the things that we're already doing there, which involves continuing to engage our parents, honoring our student voices, and researching some programmings that we can implement here to further enhance Native education in our district.
Thank you. Sorry, can I get a motion to approve this letter of non-concurrence?
So made.
A response to the letter of non-concurrence. So made by Director Velazquez. Second? Second. By Director Bullion. Okay, any questions or comments or discussion by the board?
Sam, I'd just like to say thank you for meeting with us over Google Meet while you were in Cambodia. I appreciated your willingness to do, because you were over there doing something very special for your family, and so I appreciated that time with you. And I think that everything that you have shared, the hopes going forward for being concurrent, we haven't been that way for a while, I think. So I just appreciate the work you're doing in that area.
Thank you.
Yeah, I echo that. Thank you very much for taking the time to meet with us in advance so that we could review the letter initially, review the proposed responses, ask questions, and engage in meaningful dialogue around that. Being on my 5th year on the board, we've been non-concurrent each one of those years. But we've seen that non-concurrence continue to shift and evolve over time to where now I think we're getting to a real neat place. We're seeing a lot of engagement with APAC and the new leadership that's there. So I look forward with hope and anticipation for this program and as we continue to grow our relationship together. Thank you. Thank you for your leadership.
Any other comments or questions?
Sam, I'd just like to reiterate the fact that you did take your time off to do Google Meets with so many of us. And it was an enlightening and very productive conversation. And I think that between the entire board's input and your tenacity to keep at it and get everyone's input, I think we have one of the best also letters that we're sending back to them. And hopefully we won't have to do this again next year. Because Director Velazquez said he's been on the board for 5 years. I've been on the board for 7, and we have not had any concurrence in my recollection. So I'm really excited to see what this next year brings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, thanks for your time and your work on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 7-0. We'll move on to policy, and the first is a policy update. Interim policy 516.5, overdose medication was approved at the end of June. board meeting, and MSBA and MDH have updates. So we likely, it's my understanding we may likely continue to get some updates, maybe, but.
Yes, hi, I'm gonna pinch hit for Kate Kyle. It really is not a lot of changes. What she was waiting for was just some protections around school staff. They had called out not the health workers, and so there was some controversy on whether or not they'd be protected. So now all those pieces are there. This is the MSBA policy that she's put forth, and she's comfortable with it. We've met as a district crisis response team too, and reviewed it along with the procedures that she's written and training to go along with it. So that team is comfortable. So if you're comfortable or you have any input, this is what we have.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So made.
By Director Atkinson, and a second
Second.
by Director Velazquez. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passes, opposed? Passes 7-0. That leads us to our first reading of policies, which we have none. And our second reading of policies are, we have two, Policy 203 and Policy 209. These are just readings on where we're at. There were no changes, I believe, in 209. There were some updates in 203 given our discussion at the last meeting, and those were in section 6.1.3. So if anyone has questions or comments, and we don't have to limit it to that section, but that's where the bulk of the changes were. Any questions or comments from board members? The next meeting, it will be up for approval. So will 209, just to be clear.
To be clear also, we don't have a study session in July, so the next meeting is a board meeting.
I have some comments I'd like to share. I've reviewed both Policy 203 and 209 and would like to share some very high-level concerns that I have with both these policies. Both these policies were reviewed and improved in late 2022, and I understand with the election of 3 new board members in January, Board Director France requested Policy 203 to be brought up for discussion. We've already spent a significant amount of time discussing this policy with very few changes reflected, like you stated. 203 is a policy which is intended to provide guidance on how we govern and conduct our meetings. Many of the changes that are being made to this policy, I feel, limit our ability to fulfill our fundamental duties as elected board directors with equal representation. In particular, under how we communicate 4.5, it is stated that board members shall channel their requests for district information and reports, as well as clarifications and questions, through the superintendent and the board chair. My concern with this part is that, as I've personally experienced, is if the board chair does not agree with the request, the chair has the ability to restrict a board member from receiving information that could impact a board member's ability to govern efficiently and effectively. This would also impact 4.8. Board members shall ensure the integrity of the information shared and validated. So if a board member is restricted from receiving the information based on the chair's discretion, this would have an impact on being able to validate the information. Under Policy 202, school board officers and membership, under the role of the chair, nowhere does it state that the chair's role is to determine what information is necessary for a board director to receive, or to dictate what meetings a board member can attend. Under how we conduct meetings, I have expressed many concerns with 6.1.3.1 all the way to 6.1.3.7. I believe the new language restricts members' ability and elected responsibility to fulfill the fundamental role of serving their community in which they were elected. As an elected official, it is my responsibility, and I do not take it lightly, to request the information needed to make the best decisions for our district and to attend meetings to represent the voices of my constituents that I was elected to serve. I feel strongly that this policy is not about how we govern and conduct meetings, but more about how we limit a board member who may not necessarily agree with the majority and challenges how the district has been run in the past by the previous board. I feel strongly that this policy needs to be reworked to focus more on how we govern and conduct meetings versus adding restrictions and roadblocks to how we serve.
Any other comments or questions or discussion from board members?
Can I ask a question of where in 4.5, when I read that, it says board members shall channel their requests for district information and reports through the superintendent and the board chair. Are we back to the conversation that happened before I was even on the board of an and and an or? Does everyone know what I'm talking about? If there's a concern that you're not going to send it forward, is that, Mary, you could speak of this, correct?
I think the thing with that one was, it wasn't so much that you copy the board chair, it was just that when you get multiple communications in and multiple requests, that it's actually synthesized, and also when there's direction given, that direction is then left up to the entire board. And that's the reason why the board chair was on it, because quite frankly, it's really difficult for the superintendent to say, I'm not going to respond to each one of you because we're his or her boss. Right. So that's where that one ended up. And that one wasn't changed at all. But the and or the or actually was basically just remembering it and remembering how to do it. And when you don't see C1, are you in violation of policy? So basically, if the superintendent gets a request, he should at least copy the board chair in case other people are sending requests and only into the board chair. It's more or less more of a synchronization. If they're going to do the work once, not multiple times. And then also make sure that the work that's being requested is not giving direction to administration that should be agreed to by the whole board, that sort of thing.
I was just curious if that was 4.4, 4.5.
Any other comments from board members or questions? Concerns?
Well, I don't think that without an operating norm, I mean, without any boundaries, how do we operate? I don't have any concerns. I personally have not experienced any roadblocks to getting any of my answers. But I do think we have to have some guardrails on how we conduct business and our operations. However, our experiences follow our own results. But.
And again, this came out of the board retreat, the need to clarify stuff to make sure that everyone's acting on an equal protocol.
I mean, I'll even add, as I was sitting here, I heard some questions about we all on our board book can go back and look at last year's meeting. It's all there for everybody. So, I mean, I could quickly pull up everything we voted on 1 year ago. It's available to all of us. So I would love to take the opportunity to show. I was going to show you that after Amy. Everything's out there.
Well, and for those of you who are paying attention last year, one of the things that we ended up with is we ended up running out of time. So we did push through a lot of policies just because we had a board objective to get so many hundreds sections level through. So there was, especially with the new board, there was every intention of bringing some of these back up. But when we went into our board retreat and we talked about a whole bunch of different things, there was a lot of people confused about protocols and everything, and we had never really been succinct in those. And there was a lot of people doing things one way because they'd been on the board before, And there was other people going, I don't know, and then we had the issue with the open meeting law and what you're supposed to do, who's supposed to tell you whether it's okay. And then we had the situation where some people left a meeting that they didn't need to leave because they didn't understand it. And some people showed up and spoke, and they shouldn't have, which effectively could have put us all in danger of breaking the open meeting law.
Right, I think we discussed that at a work session.
And that's where that sixth section comes from. And the changes that were made were to clarify based upon the request of the study. I don't know about the rest of them. I don't remember any more changes at all, actually, since our last discussion. But that's my history of it.
Yeah, I remember at the work session, we talked at length about it.
If we missed something.
Any other thoughts?
My thought is, given the amount of concern you share, Director Atkinson, I'm wondering, I'm sorry, I don't have, when we were in the study session and we kind of were making notes on all of the things that we went through, and if these highlighted in yellow items reflect those changes that we discussed at the study session. So I'm wondering if if there is, like, if there was things that we discussed and when you brought forward at the study session, if they're not reflected here or if they've changed and so your concerns remain. I guess I'm just trying to make sure I'm on the same page as everyone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I guess when we've gone through this policy multiple times, I thought we were in agreement that the policy that was written as 213, that basically says that a board member can attend any meeting, and if a quorum is present, they are not able to participate. So they cannot attend any meeting, and if there is a quorum present, they cannot participate, which is written in policy 213, right? And so I guess my concern is that the way this is written, I guess I don't understand when I looked at MSBA's policy and I look at how it's written with operating norms, we have so much compiled into this policy that is asking us to restrict how we do business versus on how we conduct business. It's like an intermingling of a lot of norms, of ethics. It's just, I think it's very muddy. And I don't understand why we have a 4-page policy and MSBA has a 1-page policy.
Well, I think the answer to that is that it came out of our board development session because there was a demand from the collective group, being a relatively young board in terms of years of service, that we have more clarity around how we behave and how we do business. So that's how we got here and
I
began
think I'd
this
like to call a point
process.
of order on that. I think there was a demand from one specific board director on changing or asking for direction on open meeting law.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. Yeah.
Good clarification. Yes, that one, Joss.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I broke it on accident, and I think I may have been the first of the year to break it on accident, and I needed clarity, And I needed clarity on it, so I was actually glad that was brought up, because I needed more clarity around that, and to make sure that, A, I didn't do it again unintentionally, and make sure that I was following proper protocol as a new board member, so I actually needed that clarity.
So Director Olsken, may I ask, if you accidentally broke open meeting law, did you receive a violation for that from the board chair?
I received, I don't know if it was an official violation, but I did receive several texts individually and a couple of phone calls.
She was
Immediately.
contacted, yes.
Immediately,
Just like all, yeah.
like day of. I mean, I can't speak for anything that anybody else got, but that was my
Didn't
experience.
receive anything in writing?
I'm sorry?
You didn't receive anything in writing during your board review?
Point of order. I'm really not here to talk about.
I did not.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, so coming back to our board operating norms, how does the board want to move forward?
I just had one question. 5.6 and 5.13 seem a little, basically the same thing.
Okay.
Unless I'm missing something, because one appears shorter than the others. If there's words I'm missing, 5.6 and 5.13 looked the same. Because 5.13 was moved from another place in the policy, so maybe one didn't get deleted or something.
No, according to this, 5.13 was moved from the ethics policy because it wasn't really ethical, it was more of a norm.
Okay.
And then 5.6 was there the whole time. The only thing we did different in 5.6 is when they talked about staffs or questions that we took out employees and just said staff because it was more inclusive. That was it. So one of them talks about how the board receives it, and the other one talks about that it's okay to encourage community or staff member. But if you have an idea on how to combine those, that's fine. I think it was just broken out because we moved it over from ethics.
Sure.
And to make sure that it was clear. So when we receive a question, we're supposed to send it, and this has been in there before, it was just in another section.
Right.
Send it to the administrator, or the appropriate administrator, director, or whatever that can answer the question from the community, and the other one talks about following the chain of command. And that was so that, and that's been in there for a long time. We actually get trained on that at the MSBA.
Right.
So let's say if an educator, a teacher, let's say an elementary teacher comes to us instead of going to their built team leading member or principal or something like that first, which what they should do, or at least follow the chain of command, that we do not interrupt what's going on in the general management structure. That was that, but I see where you're saying looks a little similar. There's about a one full sentence different with the direction in there.
Yeah, I think it's the last one.
There's
5.6.
there's probably
It's-
opportunity there too.
To combine it,
Yeah.
make it a little bit more succinct.
Thanks for that, though.
Is it the will of the board to combine those two?
As long as it doesn't look too wordy, I don't
Fairly,
care.
they're
Sorry?
Yeah.
fairly identical.
Yeah. Okay.
I just, go ahead, but yeah, I would combine them. And my recollection of even our last meeting, we made some conversations about striking out that you could be told not to attend a meeting.
That's still struck out.
It's still struck out. So there's nothing in here that says I cannot attend a meeting.
We don't have any policy, I don't
Okay.
think. that says
I
you
would,
can't.
I would disagree with that. If you
Where
read-
are we seeing it?
If you read, 6.1.3.2, it is the responsibility of the chair and the office of superintendent to inform the members in advance of attendance on any district business committees, advisory meetings, of the potential for a quorum and possible violations of statute or policy. So right there, that tells me that if 4 board members are going to go to a meeting, that for the potential of quorum and possible violations of statute policy, that someone would potentially tell somebody not to attend. And then the next part says, committees and advisory meetings have assigned board members for the groups, and those committee and advisory group members are limited to a maximum of 3 board members to avoid a quorum. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry. It's 6.135. When board members attend a committee or advisory meeting as observers, the member will inform the chair and the office of the superintendent of their intention to attend in order for the office of the superintendent or the chair to provide instructions and ensure arrangements are made to prevent a quorum. So tell me, how would arrangements be made to prevent a quorum other than telling the board director not to attend?
I can go back to May 22nd, and we had this conversation, and we said, in order to possibly prevent a quorum, we might need to move the room. We might need larger spaces, and I wish somebody else would say they recall that discussion.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we weren't saying it couldn't happen, we just needed to be
Correct.
situationally placed. That's my recollection.
Yes. And if I can append to that, Director Burnick, we actually have had that happen, and nobody was restricted. They were just sequestered into a different area so that, at least optically, we weren't in quorum, could still participate, could still attend, but a quorum of the board was not together to create an opportunity to have discussion.
Yeah, so I'd be happy to add a sentence that said, at
And
no
I recall
time-
that too, and I would agree. I think adding a
Well-
sentence that says,
At no time will any board member be told not to attend a meeting. If we would like to add some language along those lines, let's do it.
Chair Crosby, may I?
Please.
So, just listening to the conversation tonight, I have a wondering for the board. To Vice Chair Francis' point, the next time the board sees this, it would be at a status for vote. And my wondering to the board with the substantive conversation you're having tonight, is that something that the board wants to continue in terms of its trajectory of timeline, or do you want to revise your timeline to give some more time to work through? Just a wondering I have as I'm listening to the conversation, and do you revise that to get adequate understanding and clarity?
so taking it to a study, so bringing it to a study session so that we're all aligned on. I would be in support of that.
Once it goes back to a study session, does it have to go through 1, 2, and 3 again?
No.
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 So it could hit it
So
in
it would be
August?
pushing this discussion to then.
I'm in support of that as
I'm
well.
in support of that.
I'm in support of that.
Yeah.
My own,
Okay.
I respectfully disagree. We've been talking about this since February-ish. And we've had 3 readings on this.
More than that.
Well, I mean officially, I guess, or not, well, they've all been official. But we've talked about this. We've had our questions, we've had our concerns, we've talked about it.
Well, I guess I would tend to agree with Director Olsted and ask, is the only thing holding up a vote at the next one to have those 2 paragraphs combined and add that extra sentence in that's kind of already said anyways? I mean, nothing in here says you can, I mean, we would never do that, and we can't legally do that, so we don't say no one can attend a board meeting or a committee or anything like that. We just need to make sure that we're, abiding by open meeting law. So would extending it or sending out for comments and questions before the next board meeting change anybody's vote with the additions that we just talked about? Or are the vote going to stay the same regardless of how long we keep moving this out? That's my question. It's a legitimate question. I'm not, and to go along with what Director Olsted said, I mean, we started this discussion, I think, in February or March at the board retreat. Did the thumbs up in early April. We're now in July. We move it off to August study. That means September vote. I would ask a legitimate question, is that going to change anybody's vote from what it would be right now? If we combine those paragraphs and added another clarifying sentence in there.
I mean, Chair France, like I said, as I read through it, I feel like it's very muddy, and there's norms that are in ethics, and that's why when I started to look through other district policies, I honestly couldn't find another policy out there that was as muddy and as intermingled. And so I personally think it would be a better idea to take a new relook at it. Another thing that's I wanted to bring up, but is under 5.1, which is a really important statement, how we govern. We added the language of without negatively impacting others. And this is very confusing to me, because when you're developing policy for a district, it says board members shall seek, and whenever possible, support solutions that they believe will provide the greatest benefit to the largest number of students, which is how it was written. And now we're adding without negatively impacting others. And to me, you're like, that's like a positive and a negative. How could you ever implement any policy that is not going to negatively impact someone? And so I have a lot of concern with that language, because to me, how we govern is the greatest benefit to the largest number of students.
I can't say that I agree with that logic, but But I think at this point, I'm just going to make a call that we have 4 of us saying, let's, if it's the will of the board, again, as the chair, but if it's the will of the board, that we have 4 of us, we have 4 board members saying, let's bring this to another study session for a bit more discussion and more clarity, and I'm comfortable with that in order to try and get more collaboration
Yeah.
from the entire board. Is that,
That's fine. Thank you.
okay. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is also board policy approval. So these board policies, these policies reflect the recent legislative changes that took effect July 1st. So any other changes to this long list of policies moving forward will follow the normal policy committee process and timeline. School boards are allowed to adopt these particular legislative changes in a single meeting. So today, our purpose here is approving these based on laws that went into effect July 1st and not outside of that scope.
Can I ask a super quick question, point of order or whatever? Policy 209, did we just decide to move that through too? Sorry. That was right below.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
They went together?
Yeah, I kind of assumed they were together. I shouldn't make that assumption, though. That's the will of the board there.
They were brought forth together. I mean, originally it was just 203, and then you added 209, so I made the same assumption.
And the reason I made.
On the record that we are.
Yeah,
bringing both
thanks for
forward,
saying that,
please.
not to go backwards, but the reason I made that assumption is because we moved some things out of 209 and put it in 203, so I just want to be consistent.
Okay, thumbs up to 209, moving forward later. Pushing it up.
Thank you, Director Burnick.
Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. So do we want to go through each of these, Director Herman? Have board members had opportunities to look at them? It's quite a few.
Chair Crosby, Dr. Thomas, members of the board, all of the policies that you brought forward, as Chair Crosby mentioned, are only the legislative changes. Anything that is more substantiated or different from from anything that's recommended by legal counsel based off of legislative changes will be going through the Policy Advisory Committee when we're reviewing the 400s through 600s this year and moving forward with the regular cadence for the other policies. I'm happy to take any questions based off of the changes that recommended, but they are recommended based off of the Minnesota School Board Association Legal Counsel based off of the legislative changes that were recently implemented.
Can I get a motion to approve? And then we'll open it up.
So made.
By Director Bullion and a second.
Second.
By Director Atkinson. Any questions, comments, or points that
Yeah, I just
need
have a question. So for all the policy changes, those are all changes that are effective July 1st, or are they legislative changes that will go into effect the following school year?
Dr. Atkinson, thank you for that question. These are all that are effective July 1st or August 1st that we needed to get approved right away. There are additional policies that have recommendations based off the legislative changes. However, those we feel based off the timelines for implementation, we have more time to look at, and then we could potentially look at in conjunction when they are brought forward to the Policy Advisory Committee. We did not bring those forward to this meeting because we felt that would be more efficient and effective to bring those through with the regular cadence, especially since we have that time with the legislative timelines.
Thank you. I think it would be personally helpful, I don't know about the rest of the board, but for me, if we were, not to read every policy, but if we could just get an overview, policy by policy, of what the legislative change was and how it impacted the policy. I don't know if we can do that, or whatever.
Emily, would it be helpful if you actually just showed the grid that the MSBA put out and the policy and then the change?
You want me to pull up on the computer here?
If
Is that
that
what you're
helps,
asking?
because that helped me, yeah.
Okay, give me a minute.
Okay.
Just as I'm sorry, as Emily is going forward there, so just do note, we tried to color code strike through. It's not probably the best visually, but I do believe the chart that we have I thought that was sent to you all, but I apologize if that wasn't, but I think it's a little bit more visually easy to see through this spreadsheet that we've got, or this table kind of chart of a comparison side by side.
I think we got it from MSBA.
Did you all
That
get
we all
that?
did,
You
yeah.
guys got that
Mhm.
separately? Okay.
Mhm.
Got it. I thought we had that.
No, the color coding was definitely helpful as well.
The will of the board, we could even upload that into the board docs, because I think for the general public,
Yeah.
that'd be a lot easier
That
and
would be
efficient to read. If we can do that, we'll get that.
Yes.
Would it be possible to put it on the policy page?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, because, yeah, there's going to be a lot of,
A good idea.
Yes. Thank you. So we'll call a 5-minute recess while we're loading this up. Thank you.
You have done amazing.
Yep, that looks good.
Thank you.
All right. We are back in session.
Thank you, Chair Crosby, member of the board, Dr. Thomas, community for your patience while I pulled up this file. This is a spreadsheet that I use to track all the changes and the status of where they're at. Also linking towards where in the statutes these changes had occurred. So when going down the list that is in the packet today, 102 is in relation to changes to statute 121A.04. That is under the chapter 55, article 12, section 2 changes. If you go to 418, those changes are based off of the Cannabis Finance and Policy Bill. If you look at the legislative recap from the Minnesota School Board Association, I believe everybody received a copy of this. I also linked to the page, or identified the page numbers that the information can be found on. So on that recap, you can go to page 41 for that information. For 419, that's changes are based off of the American Indian Education Article 4 changes that you can find on page 19 of the legislative recap. 424 recommended changes. We do not have this policy in Prior Lake Savage Area School. It is only a legislative recommendation policy with MSBA. It is not a mandatory policy. In policy 425, these changes are based off of the new requirements. You can find that recap on legislative recap page 58. We do not have 504 here today. We're still waiting on the recommendations for those changes. 506, those changes you can find on multiple different pages of the recap summary, because it does have quite a few different changes in legislature that impact this policy, including non-exclusionary disciplinary actions on page 15 through 17 of the recap document, new requirements on page 56 through 57, and then the K-12 educational reporting requirements, which is recapped on page 51. 507, the changes are combined in our 506, reflecting in the same statutory changes that I just went over for 506. For 509, those changes are based off of the statute 124D03 Enrollment Options Program, amended in Chapter 55, Article 2, Section 43, and also Chapter 55, Article 2, Section 44 in that following statute. We're holding for continued review for Policy 513. As referenced earlier, there are some of the changes that aren't implemented right away that we have some time for, so we're continuing to review that policy and hope to bring it forward in its regular cadence with the Policy Advisory Committee. Policy 514, that's a part of the Educational Excellence Article 2. You can find that recap on page 11 through 12 of the recap, the non-exclusionary discipline on page 16 of the recap, and the new requirements found on page 54. For policy 516.5, Those are under the General Education Article 1 changes that you can find on page 7 of the recap. We determined based off of our policy and the recommendations, there are no changes to 524. For 532, that's based off of changes to statute 121A.582 subdivision 1 as amended by chapter 55, article 12, section 4. We are under the review for 534 based off of the universal meal programs, and Director Malone is taking the lead on that. Policy 601, we are holding for continued review. Those are a recap of the different sections of the statute that will impact that policy, but we did not bring that forward to tonight's meeting. 602, again, that's in relation to the Education Excellence, Article 2 of the recap, and then also the Teachers, Article 5 on page 21 of the recap. 603, we're holding for continued review, similar statutory changes as Policy 601. Same with Policy 604. For Policy 613, that's in relation to the changes under the Educational Excellence, Article 2, page 9 of the recap, and the new requirements on page 53 of the recap. Policy 616 is in relation to a multiple different of changes in the statute 120B.11 in subdivisions 1, 2, and 3. Also statute 126C.12, and then also the new reports that are due. You can find that recap on page 50, or you can find that summary on page 50 of the recap. For 617 and 618, we do not have those policies. Again, those are just legislative policies. They're not mandatory policies, so we're not bringing forward those recommendations today. For 620 and 621, we're holding on both of those policies. Those are new policies that were being recommended, and based off of the legislative timeline, we have time for continued review. For 624, we're also holding on continued review of that. There is the recap is on Educational Excellence, Article 2, page 9 of the recap, Educational Excellence, Article 2, page 14 of the recap, and new requirements on page 58 of the recap. For 708, that's in relation to the changes in the General Education Article 1. You can see that on page 8 of the recap, and then the new reports due on page 50 of the recap. For 709, that's in relation to the Transportation and Finance Policy Bill. That's recapped on pages 45 and 46. And then last but not least, the 806 is based off of the Educational Excellence Article 2 changes that are on page 12 and 13 of the recap.
I have a question on 602, the e-learning days. So what's the practical application of that?
Can I go back over there?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Chair Crosby, are you in, and are you referring to the e-learning day after consultation? It is, from our perspective, we have already met that. We have met with our teachers bargaining unit to review our e-learning plan. We have our personalized flexible learning plan in place that was developed actually prior to COVID-19 occurring. And we did that in consultation and planning with our teachers union and also other representatives from the district.
Okay, so it's been worked out ahead of time is what you're telling me? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
contractually.
Yep. And
Chair Cruz, sorry.
I'll just add that we got a chance this past year to implement it for the first time. And with that implementation, we have evaluated various elements of it and are making some slight modifications moving forward. That's one of those things, for example, that we'll explain in our leveled handbook out to parents and students. and families at the beginning of the year. So our secondary level, for example, is modifying their plan. And then we'll also have that reflected on the district webpage. And I think we bring that forward generally in October, just to alert our families, but we have it referenced in here as well.
Okay.
And Chair Crosby, I think, thanks for asking that, because you and I were at the regional mayor's meeting today and how it was communicated, and I'm glad you caught that, because the general public, I think, would get the same impression that each day would have to be, each e-learning day may have to be negotiated in the moment. So just being
That's how it was
clear, yep, and that's, so I thank you for asking that, because I made note from our meeting earlier today to make sure that that's conveyed with our community, so our community knows it's been predetermined and negotiated with our union, we're good to go.
Thank you.
And just to follow up a question on that, so I'm assuming that the law states that we are required to pay benefits and wages for all school employees, and that includes like everyone, like janitors and everyone that is an employee of our district. Can you clarify that, or?
No. Director Atkinson's member of the board. It is my current understanding that anyone who would have been contracted to work that day cannot be docked their pay or their benefits. So we would continue paying benefits for anyone who would be regularly scheduled on the day that was canceled. Individuals who were not regularly scheduled and didn't miss any of their contract time, we would not be obligated to pay them for those days. It would be those who would have been regularly scheduled to do the work.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Other questions or comments?
I had one question, and it was on policy 806. I read through just the green items, the new items, and my question was, will the drill and simulation be viewed or reviewed by the community, by stakeholders or the board prior to the student experience of said drill or simulation? So the, does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is, this is a conversation that we began actually with some of our local authorities last school year. And we were asked by them to kind of hold in the process of planning as they were going through some transitions, new chief, et cetera. And in talking with our team internally, we are working at building out a scenario, a live scenario that we would target for the spring. This would be something that we would develop in partnership, with our community, the board as well. This is actually, again, if you've not done these here, these are full simulations, so it would be also messaging to our community so that they are aware of what's happening. We would target perhaps one of the half days or early release days where we would have that opportunity to have a vacated space. But we are targeting the spring with now new staffing and hires with some of our municipalities, having them ready to start now that planning session moving forward. So similar to what we did with the dogs, a little different than what we did with the dogs, because we didn't want advanced communication for something like this, but this would be a little different. We would have that going out in advance.
We did this last year in the spring also. Board members were invited, but it wasn't a full simulation with communication. We did invite people from the community, anybody who wanted to come, and they walked through the different stages with one of the simulations that was going on. Now we're taking it a step further.
And so can I just ask for a point of clarification on this? So obviously I understand the value of having this, and but would parents and students be able to opt out of this to stay home? Because there's oftentimes something like this can cause a lot of anxiety.
Right.
To students.
This is why we're targeting a release day, so we wouldn't have to have students who didn't want to be there.
So they could opt out of it.
Well, they still could, they'd have to actually opt in, because we would do it when it's an early release.
Oh, I get it. Thank
So
you.
students and such would be gone and vacate the campus.
Got it, thank you.
And if I may add to that, Dr. Thomas and Director Atkinson, it's actually part of legislation that we may not require students to participate.
Oh,
Right.
And then if we do a simulation, we have to provide an opportunity for them to opt out.
Oh, perfect, thank you for clarifying that.
Exactly how the statute now reads, yeah. Thank you.
I have a few questions. Sorry to go backwards. 506 on student discipline. It's B10. We're talking about reasonable. No, I'm sorry. That's not right. I apologize. I have a lot of notes. So sorry. Okay. D, under dismissal. B, it talks about suspended students, and a school employee is a liaison to work with the students' teachers to allow the student to receive timely course materials and things like that. Who would this liaison be? Is that a peer coach? Is that a dean? Who would that be?
Yeah, I think Dean generally would be the first
Okay.
person engaged in that. It could also be, and has been, certainly a counselor, somebody that the student already has a relationship with to facilitate that, or possibly even a teacher who they have a relationship with.
Okay.
Different personnel can serve in that capacity, and this is a practice that certainly is in place, has been in place, but we would want to solidify its implementation.
Okay, I had a similar question under the transportation policy, just in general. There was a note in there about, if a student is new, at the 6-week mark, they have to make sure they have the transportation, bus safety training and things like that. And after another who regulates that? Who monitors that? And is that the building principal?
Director Olsted, great question. A lot of this information, we're still processing and determining what our practices are going to look like moving forward. I would say that is one of them on how we're going to ensure that we implement that policy with fidelity. So that is something that we will be working on in the next month to 6 weeks to make that plan for that implementation.
Great, thank you.
Other questions or comments? Okay. We will, the motion was to approve this slate of policies as proposed. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Thank you for your time and for taking the time to put that new document up for us. It really helped us understand it more. Okay, so administrative reports are next, starting with our superintendent report. No updates. Okay, other administrators, other reports?
Yes, Chair Crosby, members of the board, Dr. Thomas, we did want to bring forward that as we had shared with you in April, we have continued to review our enrollments reports as they come in and monitoring sections, especially at the elementary level. We did determine based off of 2 sections at Hamilton Ridge Elementary, they were above the discussion cap. They continue to be above the discussion cap for multiple weeks in a row. So based off of the recently approved budget that provided an opportunity for us to add sections with the funding that's set aside, we move forward with adding 2 sections at Hamilton Ridge to lower those section size to be within our targeted amount for those 2 sections. So we did move forward with that. And moving forward also with the additional specialists that may or may not be impacted based off of those sections that being added.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, and then board reports. Any updates? Summer is quieter.
I just wanted to reiterate that there's still about a week left. Applications are open for the Teaching and Learning Committee for community members or parents or family members who wish to potentially serve on the Teaching and Learning Committee. Applications are due July 16th. You can find them on social pages, website, things like that, but I encourage anybody to send in an application. And the nice thing about that application is that the meeting dates are on there. So you can kind of double check that with your calendars to see if you can make the majority of the meetings, the monthly meetings. So.
Great. Any other board directors with updates? All right. We will look at future events, which July 24th, we have our school board professional development starting at 3 o'clock at the District Service Center. And so I'll Need a motion to adjourn and transition to a closed meeting, please.
So made.
By Director Bullion, and a second
Second?
by Director Velazquez. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Thank you, everyone.